Chapter 117. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. A few silver snakes slithered through the dark sky. It was as if there was a sinister smile on a face covered by a black cloak. If someone happened to be standing in the wilderness and saw this scene, they would definitely be scared witless. The heavy downpour washed this piece of land, washing away the impetuous lead, washing away the rolling dust of the mortal world, and also erasing the traces of evil. On the transportation artery that ran from north to south, a long freight train hurried along in the heavy rain. Because it was a freight train, its speed was not like the high-speed rail and bullet trains of today, which could easily reach 200 to 300 kilometers per hour. It still retained the unhurried slowness of the old freight trains. In the noisy sound of the rain whipping, a few black shadows ran quickly along with the train. Then suddenly, like a black leopard, they jumped, grabbed a railing, and climbed up one after another. The rain became heavier. These few black shadows braved the raging wind and rain. In the darkness where they couldn't see their own fingers, they pried open the door lock of a carriage, then pulled it open, entered and closed it again. The wilderness and the train returned to their original appearance. Other than the sound of the train and the sound of the storm, there was no other movement. It was like a magical painting, but there was nothing strange about it. Ha 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 ha. Inside the train carriage, in the same darkness, there was a few heavy breathing sounds, followed by a crazy laughter. Mother****. What are you laughing at, you little bastard? A panting voice was heard. F***ck. Are you scolding me? The owner of the strange laughter scolded back. I'm laughing at the boss for being too talented. What do you know? He scolded. The person who spoke first was very unhappy and scolded back. The two people lay in the darkness, scolding each other across the air, making the whole carriage buzz. Blah 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 blah. Stop arguing. Suddenly, a sinister voice was heard, and the two people who were having a good time immediately ceased their quarrel. When the sinister voice opened his mouth, a string of strange syllables came out of his mouth. It was the language of a small Southeast Asian country, Thailand. He also knew Chinese, but from the second half of the sentence, his Chinese pronunciation was not so standard. It was very strange. Yes, boss. The two men respectfully replied. Blah blah blah. Another slightly younger voice was heard. It was also in Thai. What he said was, Boss, we should go back and snatch that guy back. Slap. A clear slap sounded in the darkness. Are you stupid? The boss scolded in Thai. That guy has already fallen into the hands of the police, and you still want to kill him? Are you stupid or stupid? Are we going back just like that? In the darkness, a thin medium-height shadow stood up. Judging from the voice, it was the young Thai man. He shouted unwillingly. It's not easy to come here, but I didn't get any money. Big brother, how are we going to explain this to father? Supan, you've done your best. The man who had laughed the loudest earlier also comforted him in Thai. If it weren't for our boss's vigilance, we might have been killed by the police. Let's go back first. It won't be too late to come out and earn money in the future. There's a Chinese saying, where there's life, there's hope. There will be more money in the future. That's right, that's right. There was another man who spoke in Chinese. He could understand Thai, but he couldn't speak it well. He simply didn't speak and let the man who had just quarreled with translate. We'll climb into this car, and nobody will know. We'll sit until we reach the border. At that time, I'll ask my brother who plays in the sea to take us away on a fishing boat. Once we reach Vietnam, we'll be safe. Lu DePeo, can you finish reading the whole sentence? The man suddenly stared at Lu DePeo who was translating for him. Don't King cut corners. Do you think I won't listen to you? Lu DePeo didn't back down and said, if you're so good then do it. I'll do it for you. I'll be tired. Stop quarreling. The boss slapped the carriage, and the iron plates clanged. The entire carriage immediately quieted down. After a pause, the boss leaned against the cardboard, closed his eyes and coldly said, Do you still have the guns? Supan's eyes lit up as he patted his bulging waist and said, Here, big brother. Lu DePeo nodded and said, They're all here. Boss, before we left, we wrapped the guns in our raincoats. Good. The boss didn't stand up, but he suddenly opened his eyes. His bell-like eyes actually had some luster in the dark. He glanced at the three men and said slowly, "We can't go back like this." "That's right. Boss, what are we going to do?" Su Pan excitedly rushed to say. "Should we kidnap someone? Catch a woman and sell her? China is full of good-looking beauties." At the end of his sentence, Su Pan swallowed a mouthful of saliva. "Boss is talking. Why are you interrupting?" Lu DePeo pulled Su Pan. "Su Pan, you're really stupid." The smoker fumbled for a cigarette and took a deep puff. He laughed at the side, and the red light flashed in the dark. Ignoring what the other three were saying, the boss continued. "This time, we escaped and took this train to the south. The police will never guess that we're here. Since we're going, let's make some money before we leave. Listen to me, the plan is like this." After listening to the boss, the few men rubbed their hands, especially Su Pan. He was drooling and laughing. "What? Do you want to do it?" The boss looked at them and asked. "Of course. Why not? You too, I'll kill the one who doesn't want to do it." Su Pan patted his lean chest and shouted. "Su Pan, don't think that you're the only man." Lu DePeo pushed him and said angrily. "Who said we don't want to do it? You dare to fight with me? I'll kick your head off." Su Pan's brain was simple, and he was about to go berserk. "Sit down," the boss roared. "Do you still see me as your boss, your big brother?" Su Pan listened to his big brother the most. Although he was not convinced, he still sat down. After calming down, the boss said, "That's it. Tomorrow, we'll go check out the area early, and then we'll take action. After we make some money, we'll leave immediately. No mistakes. If anyone dares to mess around, I'll make them wish they were dead. Do you hear me?" The boss didn't roar at the end, but his gloomy voice made people feel fear. Yes. In the dark night, the train finally passed through the wilderness covered by the rain, and drove into the dark and deep silence. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal **. Chapter 118. At night, the relatives and friends left one after another, and the Yang family finally returned to its usual peace. Of course, the trash and messy dining table still needed to be cleaned up. Poplar Fruit was chased back to the house by his mother and sister to take care of Kiki, so he couldn't help with these chores. Therefore, Poplar Fruit made a bottle of milk for Kiki before bed. While making the milk, Poplar Fruit also took the time to upload the picture of Kiki playing with Afu on Weibo. Poplar Fruit really liked this picture. Although Afu wasn't very photogenic, it was the most ordinary Chinese rural dog, but Kiki looked so cute with it. At that time, Kiki was lying on a small chair, and Poplar Fruit had just changed her diaper. Afu curiously wagged its tail and came over. Yangguo wasn't as worried as Chi-Chi was when she was facing Dinyo, because she knew that Fu was a very docile dog. Normally, it would be obedient in front of the family and would never bare its teeth in front of guests, let alone bite. Afu came to Kiki's side and sniffed Kiki's scent. Its tail wagged even more happily. Poplar Fruit knew that this was a sign that Afu was happy. Kiki was even happier. She opened her mouth and giggled as if someone was tickling her armpit. Of course, even if someone really tickled her, she wouldn't feel itchy. She struggled to sit up and looked at Afu with her big eyes. Afu also stuck out its tongue and looked at Kiki. The girl and the dog looked at each other like this for a while until Afu couldn't help but turn its head and snort. Kiki was immediately amused. She danced and shouted, "Daddy, Daddy." She called Poplar Fruit and asked him to look. At this time, Kiki's little hand accidentally hit Afu's head. Poplar Fruit was shocked. He was worried that Fu would overreact. But it didn't. Afu was patted once, and he fell straight down. His head rested on the little chair, right under Kiki's little palm, and his tail wagged nonstop. Kiki seemed to have realized that she had hit Afu. She pursed her lips slightly, and reached out her little hand to gently touch the back of Afu's neck. Poplar Fruit, who had been standing by the side, quickly took out his phone and recorded this heartwarming scene. In the photo, Kiki's expression looked as innocent and cute as a little fairy, and Afu's big round eyes were wide open, allowing Kiki to stroke the soft hair on the back of his neck comfortably, full of warmth. Afu was a female dog. According to Yang Tai, Afu had given birth to a puppy in the middle of the year, but it was given away when it was only a few months old. Poplar Fruit didn't know if Afu had transferred its love to Kiki, but he felt that this photo was too loving. At night, Poplar Fruit carried Kiki, who had been washed clean, to the bed to play. For some reason, Kiki was very excited today and hadn't slept yet. His parents were too tired, so they went to bed early today. His sister and brother-in-law went to Poplar Fruit's room to chat. The three of them surrounded the bed, and together with the headboard and the wall, Kiki was in the middle. Kiki had recently learned how to crawl, so she giggled and crawled around the bed. From time to time, she would climb over the pillows and roll to Poplar Fruit's side, pulling at the corner of Poplar Fruit's clothes to play. Dad. Kiki would occasionally raise her head and look at Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit didn't pay attention to her, so she lowered her head and played happily. Kiki is so smart. Yongping looked at her enviously and said, "She's not even half a year old, and she can already speak." Hearing her name, Kiki put down the corner of her father's clothes and looked at her aunt. She didn't understand and called out, "Kiki." It sounded a bit like Gigi, but it was very close to the correct pronunciation. Poplar Fruit smiled. He touched Kiki's soft hair with his big hand and said, "She's a fast learner. You see, she just said her name. I didn't specifically teach her, but she learned it by herself." Fruit, look at her height. Yang Chongguan, who had been observing from the side for a long time, said, "Don't you think Kiki is very big?" Poplar Fruit looked carefully and looked at Yang Chongguan in confusion. He said, "Really? Why don't I think so?" "Chongguan, now that you mention it, I think it's true." Yang Ping nodded as if she suddenly understood and said, "Fruit, you look at Kiki all day long. How can you feel it?" "Maybe, but what does it mean to be very big?" Poplar Fruit asked doubtfully. "The more you talk, the more confused I am." Yang Ping explained, "We're saying that Kiki doesn't look like a 6-month-old child now. She's growing too fast. When Xiao Jie was this big, he was only this big." She gestured a length of about 60 centimeters. "Look at Kiki. She's so tall now." Yang Ping continued. Poplar Fruit picked up Kiki, who had crawled to his side, and put her feet on the bed. With a glance, Kiki should be more than 60 centimeters. She should be more than 70 or 80 centimeters. Poplar Fruit kissed his daughter, put her down, and patted her little but to let her play. "She's indeed grown a little." Poplar Fruit didn't care and smiled. It was a good thing for a child to grow a little bigger. There could be many reasons: genetic inheritance from the parents, good nutrition, more exercise, etc. Maybe it was a combination of the first two. Poplar Fruit himself had grown to 1.87 or even 1.88 meters. Wu wasn't short either. Kiki's bone structure naturally wouldn't be too bad. As for nutrition, ever since Kiki was born, during the most difficult time, Poplar Fruit had to buy imported milk powder for Kiki even if he had to starve himself. Now that the conditions were better, and with the help of her godparents, Zheng Yujie, and the others, all kinds of expensive nutritional products were piled up in the cabinet. How could it not be good? Poplar Fruit wouldn't go back to the source, and Yang Ping didn't continue to ask about it. Soon the topic changed. "Fruit, I heard from Mom that you're working at home now? What kind of work?" Yang Ping asked curiously. Yang Ping had studied before. Although it was just a technical secondary school, and her grades were a mess, she had learned English after all. However, it seemed that she had stayed in a small town for too long and was out of touch with the times. It was hard for her to understand the concept of freelance work. "It's my profession. I'm a translator for people. I translate English into Chinese, or translate Chinese into English." Poplar Fruit smiled and explained to his sister in detail. "Can you earn money?" Yang Ping asked worriedly. "You still have Kiki to take care of. How much can you earn by working at home? You even bought so many things for us." She was referring to the bags of clothes that Poplar Fruit had just bought from Beijing's Wangfujing. "Haha, sister, don't worry about me." Poplar Fruit laughed. "I'm earning a lot of money now." Hearing her father's laughter, Kiki immediately threw down the pillow that she was playing with. She sat up straight and looked at her father, giggling. "You should save some money to get a wife in the future." Yang Ping lectured. You don't want us to arrange blind dates for you. When you find a wife in the future, you'll have to spend a lot of money. How did the topic of blind dates come up again? It was probably because Yang Ping and Su Jinfeng had reached a united front and hadn't given up yet. She wanted to find an opportunity to persuade Poplar Fruit to change his mind. Poplar Fruit, whose scalp was numb, scratched his head and quickly changed the topic. Don't worry. I still have a lot of money. By the way, sister, brother Guan, how are you doing now? Poplar Fruit asked about their financial situation. How can we do? Same old, Yang Ping said. Yang Ping was working as an ordinary accountant. Her salary wasn't high, but it wasn't tiring. The family's money was mainly earned by Yang Chongguan. Yang Chongguan was a retired soldier. He learned how to drive in the army, so he was assigned to drive in the government hostel after he retired. Of course, the car he drove wasn't a car. It was just a small van that the hostel used to transport goods. The work wasn't very tiring, and the actual salary wasn't high. However, he still earned some money when he went out to purchase goods. The couple's income was considered average in a small county. They even bought a house last year. However, they became mortgage slaves after they bought a house. Every month, they had to pay a high mortgage. Their lives were a lot more difficult. In addition, after 1 or 2 years, young Linjie would have to go to kindergarten and primary school. This was a bottomless pit. When the time came, even if the couple invested all their money, they still wouldn't be able to fill it up. Poplar Fruit and Yang Ping were chatting. Ah Fu, who was standing guard outside, squeezed a gap in the closed door. It stuck its head out to take a look and sneaked in sneakily. When the door squeaked slightly, Poplar Fruit noticed it. However, the house wasn't renovated. The floor was made of rough cement. Many small cracks were stuffed with mud. Therefore, Poplar Fruit didn't care if Ah Fu would dirty the room. Although he didn't chase it out, Poplar Fruit still looked at Ah Fu. He was worried that it would jump onto the bed. Obviously, Poplar Fruit worried too much. Ah Fu was such a good dog. How could it do something unpleasant? It simply swam around the bed and sniffed Chi-Chi's scent in the air. Then it barked twice. Woof woof. Kiki, who was a little tired from crawling around, heard the barking. Her confused little eyes suddenly lit up. She was very excited. Using her hands and feet, she quickly climbed over the pillows and climbed to the edge of the bed. Under the protection of her father's arms, Kiki lay on the edge of the bed and looked at Ah Fu with a smile. She also mimicked it and barked, "Wow wow." Kiki's mimicry wasn't very similar, but it was very loud. Ah Fu excitedly jumped twice on the ground and barked back. Chi-Chi still wanted to learn from Yanggua, but Yanggua didn't allow her to do so. She kept yelling at night, and it was too disturbing. It took Poplar Fruit a lot of effort to stop these two playmates from having so much fun. If they got together again, Kiki wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. He hugged Kiki in his arms and coaxed her to sleep. Ah Fu didn't go out. It circled around twice and quietly lay down next to a chair. Its head was on its forelegs, and it gently looked at Kiki, watching her slowly fall asleep. After Kiki fell asleep, Poplar Fruit put her on the bed. Then he looked back at his sister and brother-in-law. His eyes sparkled as he asked, "Have you ever considered starting your own business? Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to asterisk." Chapter 119. Poplar Fruit's sudden words made the whole house quiet down. Yang Ping and Yang Chongguan were stunned for a long time, as if it was a very difficult question. If they were in a developed area or other cities, this question might not even need to be asked. People already had the answer in their hearts. Do it or not, that was all. But in Poplar Fruit's hometown, this small county in the corner, maybe because it was too far away from Yangqing and other developed cities in Guangdong province, people were content with the status quo, enjoying a peaceful and poor life, and lacked the passion to pursue something. Most people had never even considered the problem of starting a business. Starting a business had risks, and they didn't dare to take the risk. Being poor but not wanting to improve, this was a very ironic cycle. Yang Ping was like this. It could be said that she had never lived in a city outside of her hometown for a long time. Even if she had a technical secondary school, she had studied in the city. Although she knew a lot about the outside world through the internet, she was still inexperienced. She naturally resisted the word entrepreneurship that Yang Guo mentioned. This isn't what we want, right? Yang Ping stuttered behind her words, obviously hiding her fear. Yang Chongguan was different. He went to the north to be a soldier and came back. Following the army, he still had a passion in his heart. But after years of hardships, this passion wasn't much left. Starting a business isn't something we can do just because we want to. Yang Chongguan smiled bitterly. To start a business you have to have money, right? We haven't even paid off the mortgage. How can we have money to think about starting a business? We can't mortgage the house to gamble, right? Although there were many difficulties, Yang Chongguan's words were obviously different from Yang Ping's. Yang Ping's subtext was, "It's not good, let's not do it." Yang Chongguan's meaning was, to start a business, we have to solve the problem of money first. In his mind, he still had the inclination to start a business. Yang Chongguan, if you dare to touch this house, I'll pinch off your ears. Yang Ping was usually gentle, but when it came to big matters, she inherited her mother's fiery character, Su Jinfeng. She was also merciless when she spoke. I didn't mean that. What I'm saying is that you can't. That's just a metaphor. Yang Chongguan complained. Looking at the couple bickering, Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "If you don't have money, I can lend you some." Yang Ping was stunned. She turned her head and said in disbelief, "Borrow money? What money do you have to borrow? You've only graduated for a little over a year, and you don't have a job yet." "Yo, sister, don't look down on your brother." Poplar Fruit laughed. "Anyhow, your brother is a young talent with an annual income of millions." "A million? What did you do to earn so much?" Yang Ping's face was still suspicious as she stared into Poplar Fruit's eyes. Translation. I already told you, but you didn't believe me, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Knowledge is wealth. Your brother relies on his brain to make a living. No need. You can keep the money you earn to find a wife. Yang Ping said. Poplar Fruit was speechless with his sister. He simply ignored her and said to Yang Chongguan directly, "Brother-in-law, have you ever thought about what you want to do if you want to start a business?" Yang Chongguan shook his head and said, "No, we don't have any knowledge or culture. What can we do?" Yang Ping said. She was still thinking about dispelling the idea that Poplar Fruit started. "Who said so?" Poplar Fruit said. "Let's not talk about the future. Let's talk about our county, which rich people have high education. Didn't you see that those big bosses didn't have any education? As long as you have the courage to try, nothing is impossible. How about we open a restaurant?" Yang Chongguan asked. Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, "No, there are a lot of restaurants in our county. We don't have anyone who is particularly good at cooking. Ordinary rural dishes aren't competitive. How about a car repair shop? I'm good with cars. Opening a car repair shop shouldn't be a problem," Yang Chongguan said excitedly. "It's not that simple." Poplar Fruit once again rejected Yang Chongguan's idea. He explained, "First of all, the auto repair business is actually very controversial. Most of it is monopolized by those who have connections with the Traffic Control Bureau. We can't compete. Besides, in a small place like ours there aren't many good cars. We can't bear to spend money to repair the bad cars. If we open an auto repair shop, it might be a losing business." "He only knows how to drive," Yang Ping interrupted and said. "Why don't we buy a truck and let him run the business?" Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Let's go to a sports car. It's hard work, and the money isn't much. Brother-in-law, you might as well stay in the guest house. It's better that way." "I'm not talking about those who go to other places to deliver goods," Yang Ping explained. "Isn't the express delivery industry recruiting partners now? In the county, the things I buy on Taobao can't be delivered by express delivery. I can only send them to the post office. I think if we buy a car to deliver the goods, it should be a good business." "There's a delivery." Yang Chongguan patted Yang Ping's shoulder and said, "A few days ago, I was driving on the east side of the city and saw a new express delivery shop. Then, I heard that there were a few in the south side of the city that were preparing to open. You really know how to pick the time. When I wanted it, There wasn't a single one. Now that I saw the business opportunity, someone else took it first. Yang Ping said dejectedly. Express delivery makes money, but it's hard work. Poplar Fruit nodded and said, but you guys gave me an idea. Poplar Fruit was full of energy and said with a smile, we can't do express delivery, right? Then we'll do the upstream link. Looking at Yang Ping and Yang Chongguan's puzzled faces, Poplar Fruit explained, nowadays online shopping is popular. Sister, you just said that you like to shop online. Then the market is very big. Opening a shop on Taobao is cheap and easy to operate. We just need to receive the order online, and then we can deliver the goods to the customers. So why don't we open an online shop ourselves? Open an online shop? What do we sell? Yang Ping asked doubtfully. We sell the specialties of our hometown. Poplar Fruit said happily, we're a coastal city. We have the most seafood. We can sell sandworms, dried fish, shrimps, and other dry goods. We can also sell some frozen seafood depending on the situation. Besides these, there's more. Don't we have a lot of fruits here? I know that there are many fruit can factories in the village. We can sell that too. If we sell it here, it'll be much cheaper. There's also handicrafts. We have clay figurines and wood carvings here, like the ones in Nanhai Island. We can also buy some coconut shell sculptures, shell necklaces, and other unique handicrafts. These should be very popular on the internet. Yes. I have a lot of friends here. They all want to bring some handicrafts as souvenirs. Yang Chongguan said in agreement. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, I think, brother-in-law, you've worked in the guest house for so many years. You should be familiar with the suppliers. This is good. We can find the best quality and cheap goods. Then, we can sell them online. We can definitely make money. Looking at Yang Ping and Yang Chongguan, whose eyes were shining and obviously moved, Poplar Fruit smiled and said, how about it? I'll invest in you. Do you dare to give it a try? Begging for monthly votes. Begging for recommendations. Everyone, use your votes to buy the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 120. The sun was shining brightly today, or perhaps it was too beautiful. The sun was shining brightly in the sky without any clouds. The whole world was shining brightly, making people feel flustered. It was already November, but the weather in the southern kingdom was still not as cool as it was in autumn. The steam rising from the asphalt road distorted the pedestrians in the distance, and the bushes on both sides of the green belt were scorched yellow by the sun, making it look like autumn. Even though it was noon and a working day, the biggest bank in the county was still bustling with people. It was not difficult to understand. Many people actually took advantage of the 1 o'clock break to deposit and withdraw money from the bank. However, the bank was closed at noon, so only 1 or 2 windows were open. It was quite annoying. Squeak. There was an ear-piercing braking sound, and a van stopped on the opposite side of the road. The sudden braking sound attracted the attention of passers-by. Opening the door, a man bent down and walked out. His long legs and height made people unable to help but take a second look. Could he be a tourist from the north? People thought. Because of his height, he had already left the men in the small county a few streets behind. The average man in the county was about 1.6 to 1.7 meters tall. This was the case in the southern part of the country. The local Poplar Fruit, who did not know what they were thinking, stood beside the car door. Yang Chongguan, Yang Ping, and Su Jinfeng, who came to the city with him, smiled and said, you don't have to come down. I'm just going to the bank to transfer the money. I'll be out soon. Take Kiki to the shady place downstairs and wait for me. After saying that, Poplar Fruit closed the car door and watched Yang Chongguan drive away. After lunch, they took a car to the county. Shopping was secondary. Poplar Fruit was going to the bank to transfer the money. They had discussed it last night. Yang Chongguan and Yang Ping decided to listen to Poplar Fruit's suggestion and open an online business. Yang Chongguan said something reasonable, which was rare. If you don't take the risk, you will be poor for the rest of your life. Give it a try. Even if you fail, you will have to start from the beginning. Yang Ping's hesitant heart was won over by this heroic and lofty aspiration. After crossing the road at the zebra crossing, Poplar Fruit walked to the bank, calculating the money in his card. In the past few months, he had earned more than 300,000 yuan. After deducting his usual expenses, he still had about 300,000 yuan left. But this time, Dongxin gave him a salary of 150,000 yuan for translating the biography of Steve Jobs. 100,000 yuan was the agreed remuneration for the translation, and 50,000 yuan was the remuneration for his other duties and the subsidies for holding a press conference in Beijing. To be honest, the money he earned as a translator was not as much as what he earned from doing missions. It was also several times harder. This was also a strange circle in the translation industry in the country. When translating for a publishing company, the translator would always be paid a fixed amount, regardless of whether the translation was good or bad, or whether the book sold a lot or not. It had nothing to do with the translator. It was no wonder that the literary translation circle was getting smaller and smaller. Poplar Fruit was like many predecessors in the literary translation industry. He relied more on his interest in this industry, but after all, he could not do it for a long time. He could only treat it as a supplement after completing his missions. He had also thought about changing the bad situation in the translation industry, but he could only think about it. Now, Poplar Fruit was just a small translator. In terms of qualifications and reputation, it was not worth mentioning. How could he change the entire industry on his own? Poplar Fruit now had about 450,000 yuan in assets. He planned to give 250,000 yuan to Yang Ping. 50,000 yuan was for them to pay off their mortgage and get rid of their worries. 200,000 yuan was for them to start their own online store business. Of course, it was not realistic for two people with a low level of education to force their way into this industry. Poplar Fruit also contacted Fat Dragon and asked him to help find someone who knew technology and how to run an online store to guide Yang Ping and Yang Chongguan. Stepping into a new industry, no matter how it was before, it was necessary to keep learning if you wanted to do well. In addition to the two of them, Poplar Fruit also planned to give 200,000 yuan to his parents. Their house was actually one of the worst ones in the village. Although their house occupied a larger area, it was still a thatched house with a few small bungalows. It looked too shabby. This 200,000 yuan was for Yang Tai to find someone to renovate his house. After chatting in the morning, Poplar Fruit made a budget. 200,000 yuan was enough to build a very good 3-story bungalow in his hometown. It was also enough to renovate the yard. Poplar Fruit even joked, "Dad, you should quickly find someone to talk about renovating the house. I don't want to come back during the spring festival and have no place to stay." There were still more than 2 months before the spring festival. It was more than enough to renovate the house. In this way, Poplar Fruit would become penniless again with less than 10,000 yuan left. However, Poplar Fruit did not mind. The money was spent, and it could be earned back. With Poplar Fruit's current ability, was there a need to worry about not having enough money to spend? After entering the bank, Poplar Fruit took a number and sat down at the rest area to wait. He looked around in boredom. There were still many people in the bank. Some were standing, some were sitting, some were men, and some were women. There were all kinds of people. Although he was not a detective, Poplar Fruit was still interested in what they did. The woman at the counter should be a shop owner. As for whether she sold clothes or other products, he did not know. She had been sitting there for a long time. She did not withdraw a lot of money, but she changed it into loose change. It was really hard on the counter staff, who forced herself to be alert and count the stacks of bills for her. The woman who was anxiously walking around the counter should be an employee of some company. She came here during the lunch break to deal with her personal business. Seeing that it was almost 2 o'clock, she began to worry if she would be caught by her boss when she returned to the company. However, she did not want to give up just like that. She had waited for so long, but this woman who had been changing loose change for a long time was driving her crazy. There were a few people sitting in the rest area. One of them was an old man with white hair. He was dressed like a farmer. His face was full of vigilance, and his eyes scanned the surroundings like a radar. His hand was tightly holding the wallet in his arms. He probably sold the fruits of his hard work for a year, and came here today to save it. There were also 2 ladies who were chatting happily. One of them was an accountant. She came here today to deal with business. However, the business counter was closed at noon, so she did not mind. Waiting in the air-conditioned hall was not a torturous thing. The other lady was an acquaintance of hers. Her hair was permed into wavy waves, and she even dyed it into poplar fruit's color, which was a bit vulgar. Her dressing was very fashionable, but it was only at the level of a county town. Perhaps if time went back more than 10 years, such a combination would also be popular in a big city. This lady was preparing to travel abroad. When Poplar Fruit came in, he saw that under the guidance of the security guard, she had used her card to exchange a few thousand Hong Kong dollars. She was waiting to collect it at the counter later. It seemed that they had not seen each other for a long time. Once they started talking, they could not stop. The accountant lady was very envious of the curly-haired lady's life. She asked about the price of the curly-haired lady's clothes and praised her for marrying a good husband. She did not have to go to work and could even travel around. Poplar Fruit was not interested in listening to the boring conversations between these women. He looked at the last person in the rest area. It was a tall and strong man. He did not look like a southerner compared to Poplar Fruit. He was a bit of a crane in a flock of chickens among the crowd. Although he was wearing a loose sports jacket, the muscles under the jacket were bulging. A few clothes could not cover them at all. Feeling Poplar Fruit's gaze, he opened his bell-like eyes, looked at Poplar Fruit, and then smiled in a friendly manner. Poplar Fruit was also a bit embarrassed. He smiled back at him and looked away. The lady who opened the shop left after finishing her business. Just as the door was closed, it was pushed open again. A few strings of laughter like silver bells came in, immediately waking up the sleepy bank hall in the afternoon. A burst of youthful aura hit their faces. Poplar Fruit looked. It turned out to be 4 high school girls from the nearby middle school. They were all wearing the school uniform that Poplar Fruit was very familiar with. This set of blue and white school uniform was the style of Poplar Fruit's junior high school. Poplar Fruit looked at it with some nostalgia. He had not seen this kind of uniform for a long time. It was almost time for class. He did not know if they were skipping class to go shopping. They did not seem to be in a hurry at all. One of the girls inadvertently saw Poplar Fruit. Her eyes lit up. She looked at Poplar Fruit, and then turned to whisper to the girl in the middle. The girl heard her friends whisper, and turned to look at Poplar Fruit curiously. Poplar Fruit also looked at her. After being noticed by Poplar Fruit, the girl did not feel shy at all. She openly looked at Poplar Fruit's face for a few seconds, and then continued to whisper to her friend. As they chatted, they even burst into laughter. Poplar Fruit looked away. He suddenly felt a bit interested. He had been paying attention to the uniforms they were wearing. When he looked at them just now, he realized that one of the girls was very beautiful. The beautiful girl was the one who made eye contact with Poplar Fruit. Of course, her appearance could not be compared to Duan Xueqing and Zheng Yujia. She looked very pure and beautiful. She looked a bit like Zhou Xiaoyu, the female lead in last year's Love Under the Hawthorn Tree. She was so delicate that it made people feel pity for her. Poplar Fruit's alma mater's uniform was very narrow and slim for girls. Therefore, for these girls who were obviously very well developed, the uniform not only did not cover them, but also showed off their proud curves. It was not only her face. That girl's figure was also the best among the 4. Presumably, this kind of baby-faced cough XX girl would have countless young boys in his alma mater go crazy for her. Even if it was a fire pit, they would still come wave after wave, right? Poplar Fruit sighed in his heart. Disaster. What is a disaster? This is a disaster. Before he finished speaking in his heart, the glass door of the bank was pushed open again. This time, the voice that came in was not as beautiful as before. Rob. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Everyone, use your votes to smash the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 121. The door of the bank was suddenly pushed open. The cool air in the hall seemed to be affected by the outside heat, and became chaotic. Everyone was stunned as they watched 3 masked men walk in. It's a robbery. The shortest Monkey King stammered. Pa. The man with the clown mask slapped the back of the Monkey King's head and scolded in Thai, Supin. If you don't know how to speak, then don't speak. Shame on you. He pushed his companion who was wearing the doryman mask and said, You come here and tell them that we are robbing. No one in the hall knew what they were talking about. Poplar Fruit also didn't know. He hadn't learned Thai yet. At this time, he finally felt the lack of language in his body. But robbery? What kind of joke is this? Everyone looked at the three people in a daze. They didn't realize that they were facing a crime. They were still wondering if they were shooting a movie. One person realized it. It was the tall and strong man that Poplar Fruit saw before. The moment the door was pushed open, he suddenly turned around to look. Murderous aura. Yes, this man felt murderous aura from the three people. These three people have seen blood. Things are not simple. He lowered his body and shrank behind the chair as much as possible. Then he slowed down his breathing and restrained his breath so as not to attract their attention. Then he carefully observed. This is not good. He groaned inwardly. Each of the three men was waving a pistol in their right hand. With the police force of this small county, he doubted if he could catch them if they were to fight. Hey, hey, hey. The man wearing the doryman mask shook the pistol in his right hand and said to the people in the hall with a smile, We are robbing. Do you know how to rob a bank? F***ck, you guys be serious. Get down. Bang. A loud gunshot echoed in the hall. The bank's security guard trembled and knelt down. There was a big bullet hole in front of him. Did you see that? Doryman proudly shouted. I told you not to move. Get down. If you move again, the next bullet will hit your head. All of you, get down on your knees. Did you hear that? Doryman suddenly changed its tone and roared angrily. This roar finally woke up the people who were frightened by the gunshots. They finally understood that the three people in front of them were not from the circus to amuse them. They were really robbers. There were all sorts of screams and cries in the hall. Poplar Fruit, who was still relatively calm, immediately lay down obediently. His heart was thumping, and he secretly raised his head to watch the development of the situation. The female employee who was sitting in front of the window was so scared that she slipped from her chair and fell to the ground. She covered her mouth and tears flowed down her face. A few female students who had just entered hugged each other and squatted on the floor in front of the rest area, crying in fear. The two women who were chatting happily just now were now lying on the ground. The female accountant wanted to hug the woman with the curly hair and cry, but the woman with the curly hair pushed her away. Her hands and feet were trembling. She wanted to squeeze into the gap between the chairs, but she was too fat to fit her fat body. The old man who was in a hurry to save money was sitting furthest away from the rest area. At this moment, he was still in a state of shock. He sat upright and foolishly watched Doryman walk to his side. You don't want to cooperate, right? You want to die, right? Doryman used a teasing tone to threaten him. He curiously pulled at the wallet the old man was holding, but he didn't manage to pull it out. Yo, you still treasure it? Doryman was angry. He suddenly smashed the butt of the gun at the old man. This was not a light blow. The old man was smashed to the ground and couldn't make a sound for a long time. Blood oozed from his head and trickled down to the floor, making it extra obvious. The women's screams were even more ear-piercing. Bang. There was another loud sound. Doryman fired a shot at the ceiling and then waved the gun. The muzzle of the gun pointed at everyone and he angrily shouted, Don't F***king make a sound. Whoever dares to make a sound, you will end up like this old man. Doryman opened the wallet and saw a few stacks of cash. He was immediately overjoyed. He threw the wallet to Supan and said in Thai with a smile, Take it, there's money. Hurry up. Robbing the bank is more important. The boss wearing the clown mask said coldly. Doryman pulled the bank security guard over and pointed the gun at his head and pushed him to the front of the counter. The bank tellers behind the bulletproof glass were so scared that they couldn't stop screaming and crying. Throwing the two luggage bags on the counter, Doryman knocked on the glass with the butt of the gun and said, Hey, hey, don't be afraid. Do you hear me? Don't cry. Otherwise I will kill him. Uncle Suwoo. The younger teller was still crying. She only stopped after a while. You. Doryman motioned to the person who looked a bit calm and said, I know you pressed the alarm. I don't blame you, but If you don't fill up these 2 bags in 15 minutes, I'll kill him. Don't think that you are safe just because the police are here. This whole hall is filled with our hostages. If you make us unhappy, we will kill all of you." The supervisor looked at Uncle Sue, whose head was squeezed against the bulletproof glass and had a pitiful look on his face. He could only nod his head submissively. "You still have 14 minutes. Hurry up." Doraemon smashed the glass with the butt of the gun and threatened. The supervisor hurriedly called a few tellers under her, and took out the money from the safe under the counter, and then stuffed it out from under the bulletproof glass. "Supan, you watch," the boss in the clown mask said. He stuffed the pistol into his back pocket, then walked to the front of the counter and greedily touched the stacks of banknotes. He picked up a stack and rubbed it in front of his nose. It was as if he smelled a delicacy and was intoxicated. He began to open the luggage bag and stuffed the stacks of banknotes into it. "Bear with it." The tall and strong man leaned against the back of the chair and peeked at the front. He thought to himself, "You can't handle these 3 armed criminals alone. Bear with it. They should leave after taking the money. It won't be too late to catch them then." The development of the situation was just as the boss had planned. In this backward small city, the police response was very slow. Their robbery went very smoothly. After filling up the 2 bags, they swaggered away. No one could stop them. Tonight, they slipped out of the border by boat. The Chinese police couldn't catch a trace of them. But was it really that smooth? At least, there was now a change outside of the plan. "Beautiful, beautiful." Supan's eyes lit up, and he called out in the few Chinese he knew. "Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to." Chapter 122. Poplar Fruit wasn't having a good time either. The person he was dealing with, Supan, was also a Muay Thai fighter. Although he was caught off guard and was dragged to the ground by Poplar Fruit, he was still a criminal who lived on the edge of life and death all year round. Facing an inexperienced Poplar Fruit, he quickly regained his composure. Although Poplar Fruit was strong, he was used to restraining his strength. When his fists landed on Supan's hard muscles, he couldn't do any damage to Supan at all. Even the pain he felt was very mild. Supan struggled and shook off Poplar Fruit. Then he jumped up like a carp. He looked at Poplar Fruit and grinned, revealing his yellow teeth. He twisted his neck and put a fist under his cheek. His other hand hooked at Poplar Fruit, indicating for him to come and fight. "Ah, ah." Poplar Fruit glanced at the source of the sound from the corner of his eyes. He saw the security guard uncle desperately hugging Doraemon's leg. Doraemon was hugged and fell to the ground while running towards the gun. Although the security guard uncle ignored Doraemon's fierce kicks and hugged him with a nosebleed, he couldn't hold on any longer. Doraemon was less than a meter away from the gun on the ground. As long as he got the gun, everything Poplar Fruit and Hiwunjwa did would be in vain. They would even be shot dead by the angry robber. Poplar Fruit saw this scene and cold sweat broke out on his back. The sense of crisis turned into a numbing current that flowed from his tailbone and stimulated Poplar Fruit's brain. Adrenaline was instantly secreted crazily. His whole body seemed to have fallen into an out-of-body state. "No. I have to quickly get rid of this barbarian in front of me," Poplar Fruit shouted in his heart as he pounced forward. Supan had long seen that Poplar Fruit was an untrained commoner. He smiled sinisterly as he planned in his mind how he would kick Poplar Fruit over, and then how he would mercilessly smash Poplar Fruit's bones with his fists. Poplar Fruit rushed over, but Supan didn't retreat. He clenched his fist and met Poplar Fruit's fist. Poplar Fruit was scared. He didn't dare to meet force with force. He pulled back his fist and dodged, but he heard the sharp sound of the wind. This was Supan's killer move. The punch just now was just a cover. He twisted his body to the left and used his left supporting leg as the pivot. He rotated his heel to coordinate with his body twisting to the left. His right leg flew towards Poplar Fruit in an arc. If this kick landed, even a cow would be knocked down. At this moment, Poplar Fruit was very focused. It was as if the whole world had entered a state of slow motion. He could clearly feel Supan's leg coming towards his neck below his ear. In this state, He suddenly felt that this seemingly incomparably powerful whip kick was actually full of flaws. He could even simulate several ways to break it in his mind. There was no time to think. Poplar Fruit subconsciously used his right hand to draw a circle around Supan's kick. His speed was even faster than Supan's kick. Supan didn't know what happened. His whip kick seemed to have hit a pile of cotton. The huge force that he transferred to his leg by twisting his waist didn't hit anything. What was worse, his right leg was controlled by Poplar Fruit. Before Supan could react, his body was involuntarily lifted into the air. He was swung up by Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit was really much taller than Supan, who was a little more than 1.6 meters tall. Although Poplar Fruit's body was a little bent. In order to kick Poplar Fruit's head, Supan used his left forefoot to support himself on the ground and tiptoed slightly. This caused his center of gravity to not be very stable. Relying on the Tai Chi fist stick technique, Yang was able to neutralize most of Supan's leg strength. Then, she stuck her palms onto Supan's right leg and gently stroked it. Relying on the strength of her hands, she pushed outwards. Supan lost his balance and was lifted up by Yang. It wasn't over yet. Poplar Fruit didn't let go of Supan's right leg. He flashed and came to Supan's side. Relying on his explosive brute force, he swung Supan around and smashed him to the ground from the air. With his back facing down, Supan was ruthlessly smashed to the ground. His internal organs were displaced and blood spurted out from his mouth and nose. But he was also tough. He didn't faint after that. His left hand trembled as he tried to get up. He also clenched his right fist. "Ah!" Poplar Fruit roared, as if he wanted to vent his anger after witnessing Supan humiliating the high school girl. He swept his right leg and broke Supan's left hand that was supporting himself. Then, before Supan could cry out in pain, he grabbed Supan's right fist and crossed his hands. Supan's right arm was bent by 90 degrees. This time, Supan finally fainted from the pain. However, both of his arms were no longer human. One of them was pinned under his body, while the other was twisted in a strange position. The broken bones even pierced through his skin and were exposed. Poplar Fruit didn't have time to care about his enemy's injuries. When he looked up, he saw the security guard uncle whose face was disfigured and Doraemon, who had already broken free. Doraemon picked up the pistol. He was panting and laughing as he raised it. He was aiming at Hiwanjua, who was the closest to him, and was being beaten back by his boss. Poplar Fruit was scared out of his wits. He didn't have time to catch his breath. He jumped to Doraemon's side and kicked Doraemon's hand that was pulling the trigger. Bang! A deafening gunshot rang out in the bank lobby again. A scream came from the resting area behind. Although Poplar Fruit kicked the pistol away, Doraemon still fired a shot. However, Poplar Fruit's kick still worked. The bullet that was supposed to hit Hiwanjua grazed his hair and hit the wall behind him. If it was any lower, Hiwanjua's head would have exploded. Even though he wasn't shot, Hiwanjua's legs still felt weak. His opponent was a Muay Thai expert who had experienced hundreds of battles. Any small flaw would be taken advantage of. Muay Thai was tricky and fierce. It was the same as Hiwanjua's modified military boxing. They were all killing moves. It was hard to say which was better and which was worse. However, even though Hiwanjua was a special forces soldier, he wasn't omnipotent. He was best at firearms. In terms of punches and kicks, he was fine against ordinary enemies. However, against such an experienced Muay Thai expert, he quickly fell into a disadvantageous position. His weak legs gave his boss, who was wearing a clown mask, a chance to attack. Boss suddenly stepped forward and punched Hiwanjua's head with his right fist. Hiwanjua raised his arms to block, but Boss followed up with a knee strike. His back leg bent and hit Hiwanjua's abdomen. Hiwanjua felt suffocated. He held his stomach and couldn't stand steadily. Bang! Another muffled sound. Hiwanjua was kicked a few meters away by Boss. He felt the pain in his bones. However, he clenched his teeth and didn't cry out. He knew that he couldn't give up now. If he gave up, he would die. However, he struggled and couldn't get up. Begging for monthly votes. Begging for recommendations. Everyone, please use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 123. F***CK. Lou DePeo, who was wearing the Doryman mask, cursed angrily. He was very unhappy. Extremely, extremely unhappy. Today, his gun had been kicked out of his hand twice. 2 times. For a person like him who got the nickname DePeo, because of his outstanding marksmanship, his gun was his lifeblood. But today he had lost his gun twice in a row. Just now, the shot that was clearly going to hit its target was diverted by Poplar Fruit's interference. He glared fiercely at Poplar Fruit, who had kicked him this time. Just now he was entangled by the security guard uncle, so he did not notice the situation at Supan's side. But the guy in front of him was white and tender, tall and thin, just like a scholar. At first glance, he knew that he was easy to bully. Lou DePeo sneered and leaned forward. His right fist was like a hook, aimed at Poplar Fruit's left ear. Lou DePeo had never learned martial arts. In the past, he only played with guns in the army. He did not learn military boxing well. But after following the Thais for years, he had learned a few moves under their influence. His uppercut looked like a real uppercut. At this moment, Poplar Fruit was not the normal Poplar Fruit. He had entered a berserk state. His reaction speed was more agile than before, and his beast-like strength was completely released. The Taiji fist that he practiced every day was now executed, as if it was a normal reaction of his body. Taiji fist press. Poplar Fruit took a deep breath and held his chest. His back was as straight as a mountain. His left palm pulled Lou DePeo's fist. Relying on his waist, he lifted Lou DePeo's right arm up. Lou DePeo was shocked, but his body could not stop. He leaned towards Poplar Fruit. At this moment, Lou DePeo was wide open. He did not know how to break free. Poplar Fruit's face was grim. His eyes were ruthless as he stared at Lou DePeo's eyes. He met Lou DePeo's attack with his left and right fists and punched his chest 10 times. Poplar Fruit's strength was great. Although he could not use all his strength in this position, he could clearly feel that each of his punches broke 1 or 2 of Lou DePeo's ribs. Finally, the most powerful punch, Poplar Fruit, hit Lou DePeo's heart. Lou DePeo was as if he was struck by lightning. His body shook. His eyes, nostrils, and mouth were bleeding. His body was as if his bones were pulled out. At this moment, Poplar Fruit's eyes were red. He did not notice that Lou DePeo was on the verge of death. He swept his right leg and lifted Lou DePeo up again. He went forward and grabbed him. With a shake of his arms, he threw Lou DePeo to the resting area. Lou DePeo's body knocked over a few benches in the resting area before rolling to the ground. Poplar Fruit's situation was good. However, Hiwonjua's situation was not so good. After he was sent flying by his boss's kick, he could not catch his breath. He could not get up. His abdomen was kicked by his boss again. His whole body slid a few meters on the smooth tile floor. In the end, he stopped when his head hit the wall. His boss pulled off his mask and walked up with a cold smile. He stuttered in Chinese. "You want to stop me? You're not enough. You're dead meat." This kick caused Hiwonjua to vomit gastric juices. His fingers trembled as he pressed them on the ground. He could only watch as his boss walked closer with a cold smile. "Damn it. I can't even meet such a strong enemy in this small place. I'm the captain of the special forces in Yangcheng. I can't even beat him. What a disgrace. Looks like I'm going to die here today. It's a pity that I dragged that little brother down with me." Although he was complaining in his heart, Hiwonjua's heart was calm. Isn't it just death? Crash. A series of loud sounds suddenly rang out. The boss stopped and looked over in confusion. He saw Lou DePeo lying in the middle of 2 benches. He was motionless and unconscious. He then looked at Supan, who was lying on the ground with a broken arm. He was also unconscious. Only then did the boss realize that he was fighting with the most difficult enemy to deal with. In this gap where he could not be distracted, 2 of his subordinates had been defeated. Moreover, Supan, his most trusted little brother, had a broken arm and was lying there with serious injuries. How is this possible? Supan also learned Muay Thai. Although he was young, he was still half as strong as the boss. The main culprit was that Poplar Fruit that he thought didn't have any killing power at first glance. The boss's expression was very interesting. One moment he was furious, the next moment he was in disbelief. One moment his face was black, and the next moment his face was red. But his little brother's injuries completely ignited the anger in Supan's heart. He clenched his teeth and pointed at Poplar Fruit with his trembling right index finger. He said word by word, "You will be cut into 10,000 pieces." Although his grammar was a mess, his murderous aura was like a prairie fire. With the last word pieces, it engulfed everything. The people at the back saw that Yanghua had taken care of the two people, so they came back to their senses and were ready to cheer. However, when they heard their boss's words, they were so scared that they swallowed their cheers. Poplar Fruit was still in a mysterious state. He wasn't affected by the boss's murderous aura. He was half in a horse stance and focused on the boss's hands and feet. At this moment, any movement in the wind could be magnified dozens of times in Poplar Fruit's ears. Every movement was as clear as it could be in slow motion in his eyes. The boss didn't pull out the pistol on his back. He only wanted to use his strongest fist to avenge his little brother. He roared and rushed over, wanting to kick Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit calmly pulled the boss's leg to release the strength. Then he lifted the boss up. His actions were exactly the same as when he dealt with his two subordinates. However, the boss's martial arts were much better than Supan and the others. Poplar Fruit only lifted him up, but the boss used his upper body as an axis to jump up. He kicked his other leg towards Poplar Fruit's chin. Poplar Fruit didn't expect him to be able to counterattack in this situation. He hurriedly blocked with his arm to protect his chin. However, his arm was still in pain from the boss's kick. At this time, the boss did a backflip and landed steadily. So strong. Poplar Fruit thought. Wenjua, who was lying on the side, hadn't recovered. Although he couldn't stand up or speak, he still saw the fight between Poplar Fruit and the others. He thought, "So I'm the weakest. Little brother, do your best. Kill him." Wenjua was also trying his best to adjust his breathing. As long as he could help, the two of them would definitely be able to take down this Muay Thai expert. Poplar Fruit was at a disadvantage from the start. The boss's Muay Thai was much more powerful than Supan's. All kinds of tricky and fierce moves were used. Poplar Fruit, who didn't know anything about Muay Thai, couldn't parry them. In Muay Thai, the most powerful moves weren't the fists but the elbows and knees. Flat elbows, pressing elbows, smashing elbows, covering elbows, double elbows, rushing knees, bending knees, stabbing knees, piercing knees, flying knees, etc. These were the most powerful moves in Muay Thai. Someone once said, "It's better to use your elbows and knees than your fists." The elbows were the hardest, while the knees were the heaviest. If you hit someone with these two moves, it would be easy to make them lose their ability to fight due to the pain. If it was said that Poplar Fruit could still counterattack against the fists and legs, but against the boss's elbows and knees, Poplar Fruit could only clench his teeth and block. But after 2 or 3 times, Poplar Fruit's arm was covered in red and green bruises. It was very painful. Poplar Fruit could feel a slight warm flow in his body, slowly warming up the area that was hit. But the effect was too slow. If this continued, sooner or later he wouldn't be able to hold on. Think. Under the stimulation of adrenaline, Poplar Fruit's mind became clearer. He forced himself to use his brain to think of how to fight and not rely on his instincts to make a move. Elbows and knees. Aren't those moves only used by the boss when he gets close? That's right. As long as I keep a distance from him, he won't be able to use those moves on me. There was a chant in Taiji Fist. Let him hit me with all his might. Pull him with 4 tails to lift 1,000 jin. Let him hit me with all his might. 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 Why do I have to tangle with him? Isn't this using my weak points to attack his strong points? Suddenly enlightened, Poplar Fruit began to pull away from the boss by 2 body lengths. You advance and I retreat. You retreat and I advance. Of course, Poplar Fruit wasn't just retreating. He relied more on his nimble body movements to circle around the boss and coordinate with his hand gestures to make his attacks miss. This time it was the boss's turn to suffer. His punches and kicks were mainly fierce. aiming to rely on speed and strength to defeat the enemy. Right now, his speed couldn't keep up with Poplar Fruit's and his strength was hitting the air. Every time he punched with all his strength, his chest felt stuffy. After circling around for a while, the boss began to feel tired. He panted heavily, and his eyes were a little unfocused. It had been too long since he met such a difficult opponent. His body was far from being as strong as it was when he was young. It's time to counterattack. Poplar Fruit understood. He took advantage of the boss not being able to pull back his punches in time to suddenly stop retreating and turn around. Although Poplar Fruit hadn't fought with anyone before today, when he fought with Su Pan and Lu DePeo, he was completely bloodthirsty. He didn't care how badly he beat the enemy. At this time, Poplar Fruit couldn't hold back his strength. Poplar Fruit suddenly used his right foot as an axis and circled to the boss's side. His left hand grabbed the boss's left fist, and his right arm blocked the boss's left elbow. Suddenly, he pulled outwards. Although it seemed like a lot of movements, in reality, it all happened in a flash. With a crisp sound and a scream, Poplar Fruit directly broke the boss's left arm. "While you're sick, I'll take your life." Yonghua swept his leg at the boss's knee, forcing him to kneel down. Then he followed up with a whip kick towards the boss's head. The boss fell to the ground like a sack. As soon as the boss turned around, his eyes were filled with Poplar Fruit's huge fist. He subconsciously tilted his head. Poplar Fruit's fist brushed past his ear and smashed into the floor. The mirror-like tiles actually cracked. "Dodge. Let's see how many you can dodge." Poplar Fruit smashed again with all his strength. The boss raised his right arm to block in front of his face, but with a crack, his right arm broke. In the end, Poplar Fruit's fist still landed on the boss's head. Although the strength was much weaker, it was still powerful. With a muffled bang, the boss's eyes rolled back, and he fainted while spitting out blood. Poplar Fruit still didn't let go. He raised his right fist high and prepared to smash down again. "Enough. If you hit him again, he'll die." A pair of big hands pulled Poplar Fruit's fist and anxiously called out. It was Yonghua who had just recovered. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. "Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. Greater than or equal to **. Chapter 124. Poplar Fruit's right fist was being held. He still wanted to struggle and even throw the person holding him away. Fortunately, he heard Yonghua's voice, so he withdrew his strength. "Is it over?" Poplar Fruit looked at the boss who was being beaten by him on the ground and muttered. "Cough cough, it's over. You beat them all down, haha, cough cough." Perhaps it was because he had just been kicked by the boss, and because he had used a lot of strength to hold Poplar Fruit's hand. Yonghua had just opened his mouth when the muscles in his lungs spasmed again, and he coughed violently. The boss's state at this time was that his eyes had turned white, and he was exhaling more than he was inhaling. He was about to die. Poplar Fruit suddenly got off his body in a hurry and stepped away from this person. His eyes were filled with fear. This was me? Yonghua put away the 3 pistols, then sat beside Poplar Fruit and patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder. He laughed heartily and said, "Yes, it was you. Good job, little brother. I didn't expect you to be so powerful. I owe you my life." Poplar Fruit didn't listen to Yonghua at all. He was still in a state of delirium. "He's dying, I killed him, I killed him." Yonghua patted Poplar Fruit's face and said seriously, "Little brother, look at me." He shouted too loudly, and he coughed violently again. He stared into Poplar Fruit's eyes and said, "Listen, you didn't kill anyone. Even if you did, what you did was right. These people were all vicious criminals, and they had guns. In that situation, if you didn't kill them, they would kill you. Do you understand?" Cough. Poplar Fruit lay on the ground and retched. After a while, he felt a little better. This fight had completely exceeded his own imagination. He had never thought that he could fight so well. Moreover, he had been able to injure and cripple his opponent so easily. The impact on his heart was too great. Yonghua patted Poplar Fruit's back and wanted to continue persuading him. Poplar Fruit supported himself with his hand, sat back, and waved his hand with a pale face. He said, "Big brother, thank you. I'm fine. How are the others?" After they knocked down the gangster, The other people in the bank hall who were still in shock slowly came back to their senses. The two women who knew each other began to hug each other, and the others slowly sat up straight on the ground. The aftereffects of surviving a disaster, the weakness in their limbs, was not something that would disappear in a short time. The high school girls were much better. 3 of them who were not bullied crawled to the girl lying on the ground, hugged her, and helped her tidy up her clothes. The girls had leaned weakly on their shoulders, sobbing. She felt lucky, but more than that, she felt wronged and scared. The police finally arrived at Shanshan. Dozens of cars surrounded the bank entrance, and the person in charge shouted through a loudspeaker for the criminals to surrender. Poplar Fruit looked like he was sleepwalking. He didn't know how He Wenjua called the police in. The police stared dumbfounded at the mess in the bank hall. They called an ambulance to pick up the 3 criminals, the injured old man, and the security guard uncle. Then they arranged for several police cars to take the rest of the people back to the police station. When Poplar Fruit came back to his senses, he was already sitting in the police station. He Wenjua was sitting opposite him with a smile. "What's going on?" Poplar Fruit looked at He Wenjua in confusion. "Little brother, your martial arts are good, but you're still not brave enough. You're scared out of your wits over a small matter." He Wenjua laughed. Poplar Fruit shook his head and asked, "What's going on now?" "We're taking a statement at the police station," He Wenjua said. "But it's okay, I've already recorded it for you." "Poplar Fruit, right?" "I'm sorry, I didn't ask for your permission to see your ID card." He Wenjua lightly tossed the wallet into Yanggua's hand. "It's okay." Poplar Fruit forced a smile. "This time I really have to thank you, Brother Yang," He Wenjua said seriously. "You saved me twice. The first time, if you didn't kick me, I would have been shot. The second time, you helped me defeat the Muay Thai master." Poplar Fruit smiled embarrassedly. "You don't have to be like this. I was in a hurry and didn't think too much. How is it? Is the case solved now?" "How can it be so fast, you know? Of the 3 people, 1 is dead and 2 are injured. The injured one is still lying in the hospital. It's estimated that it won't be so fast. And now, with such a big case, the provincial office has already sent someone to take over." "Don't worry." He Wenjua laughed. "Someone died?" Poplar Fruit's face paled. "Don't worry." He Wenjua went to Poplar Fruit's side, patted Poplar Fruit's arm with his stout arm, and said, "You're just defending yourself. I've already helped you deal with it. No one will trouble you." "Thank you, big brother He." Poplar Fruit gratefully said. "No, this is what I should do." He Wenjua waved his hand and said, "You saved me, I should be thanking you." "You don't have to thank me." A thick and magnetic middle-aged man's voice sounded behind Poplar Fruit. "If you want to say thank you, I should be the one thanking you." The person who came was a man in his 40s, wearing a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. He looked cultured and elegant, like a teacher from a university. When He Wenjua saw him, he quickly stood up and said, "County Magistrate Chen, why are you here?" This time he came down for a mission, and he had dealt with the leaders of the county. Although his military rank was very high, he still showed due respect to the local leaders. "County Magistrate?" When Poplar Fruit saw this, he also quickly stood up. "Sit down, sit down." County Magistrate Chen pressed their shoulders and asked them to sit back down. He said gratefully, "I heard about this matter from them. I'm really grateful to you today." "Oh, County Magistrate Chen, you're too kind." He Wenjua laughed. "At least I'm still a soldier. It's our duty to protect the safety of the people's property. In this kind of situation, I can't just stand by and watch." Poplar Fruit didn't know how to answer, but he also nodded. "No, thank you. I'm not just thanking you as a county magistrate for helping my county to resolve a crisis," County Magistrate Chen said. "I'm thanking you as a father for saving my daughter." This time Poplar Fruit and He Wenjua were stunned. Poplar Fruit hesitated and asked, "That girl is your daughter?" "Yes, she is my daughter. Now her mood is still unstable, and she's still in the hospital, so she can't come with me. My daughter's chastity was saved by the 2 of you. I'm here, bowing to the 2 of you. Thank you for saving my daughter's life." When he said this, the old man's tears fell. This county magistrate was now just a poor girl's father. He was full of tears. and he deeply bowed to Poplar Fruit and Wenjua, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Please use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 125. Daddy. Kiki stretched out her hand and touched her daddy's chin. There was a new stubble there, and it was a little prickly. Kiki was both afraid and delighted at the same time. Poplar Fruit caught her off guard and clamped down on Kiki's hand with his chin and neck. The stubble rubbed against her hand gently, causing Kiki to frown in pain. She was so anxious that she was about to cry. Poplar Fruit knew when to stop and let go of Kiki with a chuckle. However, Kiki did not learn her lesson. After her hand stopped hurting, she chuckled and touched her daddy's chin again. Even after so many times, she still did not find it annoying. As Poplar Fruit teased Kiki, he sighed at yesterday's miraculous experience. It was rare for him to make a trip to his hometown's bank, but he encountered a robbery. Furthermore, the robbers were not ordinary people, but foreign Muay Thai masters. Those robbers probably did not expect that there were hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the bank. Not only was there the captain of the special forces from Yongqing City's military, but there was also Poplar Fruit, a martial arts master who did not even know his own strength. Actually, they had guns. If not for the fact that they wanted to make a move on that beautiful high school girl, they would not have let their guard down. That gave the infuriated Poplar Fruit and Wenjua a chance to retaliate. This battle was won by a hair's breadth. However, Poplar Fruit and Wenjua did not expect that the high school girl they saved would be the county head of Poplar Fruit's hometown. After this trip, Poplar Fruit and the captain of the special forces from Yongqing City's military had formed a life-and-death friendship. Wenjua even addressed Poplar Fruit as his brother before he left, and even invited him to visit his house when he was free. Not only that, Poplar Fruit had also become the county head's benefactor. In China, it was easier to get things done with connections. In a small county like his hometown, to be able to form a relationship with an official was definitely a source of wealth. The benefits were immediate. At the thank you banquet held by the county magistrate at noon, Poplar Fruit only mentioned the business of his sister and brother-in-law when County Magistrate Chen asked about it. County Magistrate Chen patted his chest and said, "Open a store? No problem. I'll get someone to pick a good store for you in the new trade city at the station." Therefore, before his sister and brother-in-law's business had even started, they had already developed from a purely online business to a two-pronged business both online and offline. Let's not talk about whether the online store could make money. Just look at the Poplar Fruit at the station. There was a good store in the newly built trade city that sold everything for money. What's more, County Head Chen had taken the initiative to fight for low-interest loans to support small and micro industries, as well as the lowest shop rent. Everything happened too fast and too suddenly. Poplar Fruit still felt like he was in a dream. However, Poplar Fruit didn't want such a thing to happen again. That was because he was no longer alone. His every move affected the hearts of his entire family. Yesterday at the police station, he only saw his family when it was almost night time. His mother, who had been worried when she heard the gunshot, hugged Poplar Fruit tightly when she saw him. She was afraid that her son would be gone if she turned around. His sister also pulled Poplar Fruit to check on him with red eyes. She only relaxed when she saw that Poplar Fruit wasn't missing any parts. Not only was his family worried, but Poplar Fruit also couldn't hold back. He hugged Kiki, who had cried for a long time and finally fell into a deep sleep. His heart ached. He knew that when he wasn't by her side, Kiki needed her father too much. If something really happened to him because of the robbery, what would happen to Kiki? Kiki didn't have a mother and a father. How could she survive at such a young age? Poplar Fruit didn't dare to think about it. He just hugged his daughter and didn't want to let go for a long time. Wenjua asked Magistrate Chen to keep the details of the case confidential, especially the information about him and Poplar Fruit. Wenjua considered that on one hand his identity was special. On the other hand, he didn't know if these robbers had accomplices who went out to protect Poplar Fruit. Wenjua hoped that fewer people knew about this matter. Poplar Fruit obviously didn't have any objections. He also didn't want this matter to cause an uproar and become the talk of the town. After returning home, his father, Yang Tai, asked about his well-being again. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly as he fed Kiki milk and coaxed her to sleep. Then he closed the door and went to sleep. To be honest, after a big battle and a day and night of torment, Poplar Fruit was really tired. However, the physical tiredness was secondary. More importantly, he was mentally exhausted. He had been under a lot of pressure at the bank. After that, he didn't rest. He had been going through the procedures at the police station and chatting with the magistrate. It was only now that he could truly relax. He was physically and mentally exhausted. Ever since Poplar Fruit started practicing the internal martial arts, he hadn't been this tired. Therefore, he slept from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until it was pitch black outside. Poplar Fruit woke up because of Kiki's cries from the baby stroller that was laid flat like a cradle. In the dark, Poplar Fruit sat on the bed in a daze for a while. Only then did he completely wake up. He just had a dream. He dreamed that Lou DePeo, who was killed by him, Supan, who was injured and crippled by him, and Boss, who was actually alive and kicking, came running to him for revenge. Poplar Fruit showed his might and beat them away. However, in the end they actually snatched Kiki away. Kiki called out Daddy with all her might, but Poplar Fruit couldn't catch up to her no matter how hard he tried. Fortunately, Kiki was still there. Poplar Fruit carried Kiki in the dark. Kiki couldn't see her father clearly, but she could clearly feel her father's heartbeat and smell. She was very happy. Yangwa hugged her and kissed her fair and tender little face in a sentimental manner. In the end, his unshaven chin pricked Chi-Chi's cheeks again, causing her to cry out in pain. Poplar Fruit secretly said in his heart, "Kiki, don't be afraid. Daddy will definitely not let those bad people hurt you." Yes, no matter how vicious the criminals were, if they wanted to bully Kiki, they would have to step over Kiki's guardian, Poplar Fruit. "Fruit, are you awake?" Yang Ping's voice came from the courtyard. She probably heard the sound of Kiki and Poplar Fruit playing. "I'm awake," Poplar Fruit replied loudly. "Since you're awake, then come out. It's time to eat." Su Jinfeng shouted loudly. "Okay, I'll be right out." Poplar Fruit put on a small jacket for Kiki, then pushed open the door and carried her out. Why didn't you turn on the lights?" Poplar Fruit was puzzled when he pushed open the door, but it was still dark. "There's no electricity?" Poplar Fruit walked towards the few dark figures in the darkness. He could vaguely make out the figures of his mother, sister, and father. Suddenly, their singing sounded in the courtyard. "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you." "What's going on?" Poplar Fruit felt a bright light appear beside him. He turned his head and saw Yang Chongguan walking out from the side room with a big cake. Behind him was a bouncing little tail. There were many candles on the cake. The flickering candlelight illuminated the night and made it extremely warm. Today is November 13th? Poplar Fruit calculated in his heart. Today is my birthday. Poplar Fruit realized that he had forgotten that today was his birthday. However, his family remembered and even prepared such a beautiful birthday cake and celebration ceremony for him. "Happy birthday to you." The birthday song was finally finished. His sister clapped and cheered. "Fruit, happy 24th birthday to you." Everyone cheered too. Even Kiki was shouting and clapping her little hands. She didn't know what was happening, but she felt that everyone was clapping and shouting. The atmosphere was so happy that Kiki followed suit. "Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, sister. Thank you, brother-in-law. Thank you, Jia." And Poplar Fruit smiled and kissed Kiki, saying, "Thank you, my baby girl Kiki. Quickly make a wish and blow out the candles." Yang Ping walked up and carried Kiki over. Poplar Fruit felt extremely happy at that moment. He clenched his fists and murmured with his eyes closed, "I'm 1 year older. In the new year, I hope that my family will be healthy and happy. I hope that Kiki can grow up happily and healthily, but don't grow too fast. Dad still likes your cute look, haha. I also hope." Poplar Fruit hesitated for a moment. A blurry figure flashed in his mind, but he still extinguished that impossible thought and continued, "I hope that in the future, I can find a good girl who loves Kiki and me. Then I can hold her hand in Kiki's hand. Our family will never leave each other, and will continue to walk together." Seeing that Poplar Fruit opened his eyes, everyone began to shout in unison. Blow out the candles, blow out the candles, blow out all of them. Kiki was also unwilling to be left out, so she followed along and shouted. 24 candles. So many. You guys. Do you think I can't finish blowing all of them? Poplar Fruit shouted mischievously. He took a deep breath, bent down and blew fiercely. Then from left to right, all 24 candles were blown out. Brother-in-law was the first to turn on the lights in the courtyard. The courtyard was suddenly lit up. Poplar Fruit squinted his eyes and saw the smiles on the faces of his family members. Kiki was still in a daze from the change of darkness to light. She tilted her head, looked left and right, and finally found her father. The most excited one was Yang Lingjia. He pulled the corner of his mother's clothes and jumped, shouting excitedly, "Eat cake, eat cake." Everyone was amused by this gluttonous child and burst out in laughter. Laughter reverberated throughout the entire courtyard. Even the resplendent starry sky could not hide the radiance of happiness. In another world shrouded by the starry sky, a small boat was speeding on the vast ocean. It was quietly drifting across the country's border under the cover of night. Along the way, it was daunting but not dangerous. Finally, it reached the waters of Vietnam. Suddenly, a head stretched out from the cabin. He looked longingly at the road he came from, even though it was also a boundless dark ocean. "Smoker, what are you doing? Sit tight, the boat is not stable." A voice came from behind. The head looked hatefully in the direction of the small county that made them suffer. He swore in a low voice, "Boss Big Pow, just you wait. I will definitely come back to avenge you." Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Everyone, use your votes to smash the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 126. I'm back. When he got home, Poplar Fruit carried Kiki and knocked on Song Ji-wen's door. The door wasn't closed properly, so Poplar Fruit opened it. He walked in and shouted, "You're back." Song Ji-wen poked his head out from behind the sofa and said weakly, "What's wrong with you?" Poplar Fruit took a few steps back with Kiki in his arms. "Are you sick? Why didn't you close the door?" He was worried that if Song Ji-wen caught a cold, he would pass it to Kiki. "No, you're the one who's sick." Song Ji-wen didn't even bother to roll his eyes and said in a low voice. Then he fell back onto the sofa. "What's wrong with you?" Since he wasn't sick, Poplar Fruit was relieved. He carried Kiki to the front of the sofa and sat on the coffee table. He looked at Song Ji-wen and asked. Poplar Fruit finally saw how dispirited Song Ji-wen was. His hair was messy, and his eyes were bloodshot. It was already 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but he was still lying on the sofa in a daze. Hey, Poplar Fruit kicked him. "Wake up. Look at you. What's wrong with you?" Song Ji-wen sat up in a daze. He leaned his head on the sofa and didn't speak. Poplar Fruit walked around the living room with Kiki in his arms. He said, "Why are you so dispirited now? Don't tell me you're heartbroken like me. That's not right. Weren't you the one who broke up?" The breakup Poplar Fruit was talking about was a few days ago. At that time, when he was still in his hometown, Song Ji-wen called and said that he had broken up with Xiao Yao. On the phone, Song Ji-wen was very happy, as if he had gotten rid of a heavy burden. Song Ji-wen had long wanted to break up with Xiao Yao. Song Ji-wen and Xiao Yao had been dating for more than half a year. This was something that Poplar Fruit found hard to believe. In the past, when he was chatting and joking with Song Ji-wen at home, Poplar Fruit would tease him and ask if he had turned over a new leaf. Song Ji-wen had never been in a long-term relationship before. The girlfriends he had been in before were only together for 2 to 3 days, and no more than a month. Some girls could even be described as sex friends. He was a womanizer. When they were in university, Song Ji-wen once declared after getting drunk, "Before the age of 28, I won't consider marriage or long-term love." But this time, he and Little Demon had been together for half a year. It was a miracle among miracles. 2 months ago, Song Ji-wen finally couldn't help but tell Poplar Fruit the truth. So he had wanted to break up with her for a long time. However, facing Xiao Yao, he swallowed back the words that were about to come out of his mouth several times. This girl was too innocent. If he broke up with her like this, it would only hurt her badly. Although Xiao Yao usually dressed very kawaii and liked to speak softly and coquettishly, that was only because she had watched too many cartoons in Nihon country. She was a little brainless. She was a typical post-90s girl, although she was actually born in the late 80s. She was playful, had a personality, and had a very unique way of thinking. However, Xiao Yao was a very pure girl. When she was with Song Jiwen, she was still pure and was very conservative about relationships. Other than the fact that she was influenced by anime, she was really like a blank piece of paper. Her heart was very pure, and she believed that everything was beautiful. Therefore, as a public kindergarten teacher, she was especially liked by children and parents. Song Jiwen really didn't know how to break up with such a girl. Xiao Yao wanted to stick to him all day long. Song Jiwen was a little tired of it, and wanted to find a new passion. However, he was worried that if he broke up with her, this crystal-like girl would be smashed into pieces again. Therefore, the two of them were entangled for half a year, until Xiao Yao said that she wanted to deepen the relationship between the two of them. She planned to change to a job closer to here, and then move in with Song Jiwen. Song Jiwen's character couldn't be restrained. He wanted to live a single life, but he was unwilling to be lonely and wanted to pursue excitement. This time, Xiao Yao really scared Song Jiwen. He couldn't delay it any longer. If he delayed it any longer, wouldn't Xiao Yao be insatiable and propose to him? Song Jiwen decided to cut the Gordian knot and settle this matter as soon as possible, so that he wouldn't delay this good girl. He found an opportunity to ask Xiao Yao out and officially break up with her. Poplar Fruit didn't know what the situation was like at that time. Perhaps Xiao Yao was heartbroken and even begged, but Song Jiwen was really determined to break up with her. Being trapped by love like this wasn't Song Jiwen's style, right? For so many years he had dumped so many girls, but he had never seen him so sad and haggard. Poplar Fruit asked doubtfully, "Don't tell me you only remembered to cherish her after losing her? Since you can't bear to part with her, why don't you get Xiao Yao back?" "She's gone," Song Jiwen said in a low voice. His eyes were silently dripping with tears. "Gone? Where did she go?" Poplar Fruit asked, puzzled. "She didn't go anywhere. She's dead. She's gone." Song Jiwen shouted impatiently, "Dead. Dead." Poplar Fruit was shocked. He couldn't believe this fact. A person was fine. How could she be gone? After asking for a long time, Poplar Fruit pieced together the whole story from Song Jiwen's intermittent responses. It turned out that after Kitten went home crying that day, she called Song Jiwen more than 10 times, but Song Jiwen didn't pick up. The next day, Kitten went to work. She didn't sleep the whole night and was thinking about something. She walked on the street absent-mindedly. Suddenly, she was hit by a car that ran a red light. She was sent to the hospital, but Xiao Yao wasn't saved. She might not even have the will to live. Song Jiwen couldn't speak clearly. He covered his face and choked with sobs. If I didn't break up with her, this accident wouldn't have happened. Maybe she could have held on a little longer. Maybe she could have survived. Song Jiwen fell into deep self-blame at this moment. He repeated over and over again, "If we didn't break up, she wouldn't have died." Poplar Fruit sat beside him and put his arm around his shoulder. He wanted to comfort him, but he didn't know what to say. Thousands of words came out of his mouth, but they became a dry sentence. "Mosquito, it's not your fault." Song Jiwen looked back at Poplar Fruit and said, "Lao Gua, if you say it's not my fault, do you believe it?" Yes, Poplar Fruit didn't believe this sentence himself. If he put himself in Poplar Fruit's shoes, he would also take the blame. This could be seen from Wu Yu's difficult labor. He was still guilty of Wu Yu's death, although this guilt had slowly faded because of his fatherly love for Kiki. How could Poplar Fruit persuade him? He could only rack his brains and come up with different ways to tell Song Jiwen that Xiao Yao's death was already a fact. No matter how regretful he was, no matter how sad he was, he couldn't bring Xiao Yao back to life. Poplar Fruit was worried that Song Jiwen would fall sick from grief because of this, or even sink into depression. What you should do now is to change yourself. Don't treat relationships as child's play. In the future, you have to treat everyone who loves you seriously. Let Xiao Yao see you in heaven and feel a little gratified. Poplar Fruit said earnestly. At this moment, Song Jiwen's dim eyes seemed to have a bit of life. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 127. Ever since Kiki learned how to crawl, she could no longer stay still. When she got home, she didn't want to stay in the cradle or crib all the time. Every day when she woke up, she was full of energy. Poplar fruit let her crawl on the bed, but she couldn't get enough of it. She even wanted to climb over her father's guardrail and slip under the bed. So Poplar fruit went to great lengths to redecorate the living room, transforming it into Kiki's playground. First, he used a combination of cabinets and boxes to separate the living room and the dining room. Adults could step over the boxes to reach the kitchen and bathroom, but Kiki couldn't. The large cardboard box filled with heavy sandbags was an insurmountable mountain for Kiki. Next was the carpet. The weather was getting a little cold, so it wasn't a good idea to let Kiki crawl on the slippery tile floor all the time. So, Poplar fruit bought a pure wool carpet that was big enough to cover the entire living room. It was said that it was made by Persians. Whether or not it was just to trick Poplar fruit didn't know, but the carpet was very expensive. The whole Poplar fruit spent almost 10,000 yuan. Poplar fruit didn't care if his card was emptied because of the carpet. Instead, he felt that the money was well spent, because the carpet was not only soft and comfortable, but also a little elastic. Even if Kiki learned how to walk in the future, she wouldn't feel pain if she accidentally fell down. In addition to the carpet, Poplar fruit also bought a lot of cotton pads, and the protective pads were of good quality. They were filled with thick and soft cotton, not with inferior plastic and foam. Using these cotton pads, Poplar fruit covered all the corners and even the edges of the house, including the coffee table and the legs of the table and chairs. After all, Kiki was still young, and Poplar fruit was worried that Kiki would accidentally bump into something when she crawled. It took Poplar fruit an entire day to get these things done. Of course, Song Jiwen had helped a lot. She did not know if this guy had really walked out of the shadow of the incident with Xiao Yao. It seemed that he had become less decadent this weekend. Moreover, he looked very energetic in his polo shirt. To be honest, there was a reason why Song Jiwen was able to fool around. The Song family was full of handsome men. Song Jiwen's father, Song Chunfang, still looked very charming even though he was middle-aged. Song Jiwen had inherited his father's good qualities. He was known as the most handsome guy in the university. Although Poplar fruit had surpassed her, that was only because of her figure and height. In terms of face, Song Jiwen was still better. Therefore, when Poplar fruit and Song Jiwen walked out, they were two handsome men. It was just that one was a little taller, and the other was a little shorter. One was dressed inappropriately while the other was very tasteful. Of course, the one who was dressed inappropriately was Poplar fruit. Other than Givenchy, Poplar fruit did not have any set of clothes that could be considered fashionable. Although he was rich, he did not change his mentality of being poor. However, there was an advantage to being tall, and that was that you looked good in anything. Even if it did not match, a pair of long legs was enough to attract people's attention. Today, it was all thanks to Song Jiwen's help that Poplar fruit was able to buy so many things back. Later on, the carpet was also laid out with his help to move the cabinet and sofa. However, Song Jiwen had something to do at noon, so he left first, leaving Poplar fruit alone to pack the cotton pads. After lunch, the rough renovation of Kiki's amusement park was completed. Although it was called an amusement park, it was just a venue. There was no entertainment. In order to make Kiki happy, Poplar fruit even took all of Kiki's toys down from the bed. The toys were given by guests who came and went. The old neighbors Lu Gillen and his wife, the old leader Du Ronghui, Uncle Jean, and Xinda Xiaodehua. When they came to Poplar fruit, they would bring some gifts for Kiki. Most of them were toys. Duan Xueqing had also given her gifts once. However, the one who gave the most gifts was Zhang Yujia. She had bought a lot of toys in Guangzhou during the National Day holiday. Later, when Poplar fruit went to Beijing, she asked her brother to buy a few toys in the pile of things. Adding all of these together, Kiki's toys had long exceeded 20. As Kiki's toys increased, Poplar fruit had a headache. Although Kiki was young and didn't know anything, she was very clear about how many toys she had and what toys she had. If Poplar Fruit dared to hide any of her toys, she would dare to cry in front of Poplar Fruit. Usually, other than Kiki's favorite penguin pillow, Kiki's other toys were piled up on her father's bed. Every day, when she woke up from her crib, Kiki could play with them. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit's bed was big enough. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have a place to sleep. But now the living room had become Kiki's playground. All of her toys could be placed there. There were dolls, music boxes, sports cars, and so on. There was also a wooden cart that could be pulled by a rope. There was a teddy bear sitting on it. Whenever the wooden cart started, the teddy bear would beat the drum. When Poplar Fruit carried Kiki into the living room, she couldn't wait to climb into her pile of toys. Perhaps she realized that her range of movement was many times larger than the bed she used to sleep on. Kiki flipped over on the floor and laughed happily. After making sure that the doors and windows were closed, Poplar Fruit picked up his book and walked to the balcony. With his back against the glass door and the quiet night outside, he began to read. During this period of time, Poplar Fruit didn't have much time to study. He was busy translating and running around. It wasn't until today that he had time to pick up a book. Of course, he wasn't reading books for the postgraduate entrance exam. He had already finished his revision. Those political books that required rote memorization were really no pressure for Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit was now learning a new language, Russian, which had a population of 300 million people. This language had a very long history. In the early days, it was hieroglyphics. Later, it was influenced by Greek and Latin characters and slowly became what it was today. The Cyrillic alphabet wasn't like other European and American languages, which more or less had a similar origin to English. It could be said that it had its own unique way of writing and pronouncing. Poplar Fruit found it very difficult to learn. Compared to the past when learning French and Spanish was easy, the difficulty factor now was many times higher. However, for Poplar Fruit, who had a monstrous memory, it was only a matter of time before he defeated them, wasn't it? Kiki seemed to be very active in this small playground that her father had painstakingly created. Poplar Fruit was reading and would look at Kiki every few minutes. As a result, every time he looked at her, she would move her little but to a different position. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit had already surrounded the entire amusement park. Kiki could only move within the range of the living room. No matter how she crawled, she wouldn't crawl to a dangerous place outside. Bang! Suddenly, there was a small muffled sound. Poplar Fruit was shocked. He looked up and saw that Kiki had bumped into the leg of the coffee table. This girl must have been crawling on the ground and didn't look in front, so she bumped into it. Although he had used a cotton pad as a protective measure, who knew if this protective measure would work? Didn't the car have protective measures? Collision bars, protective air cushions, and so on. With such comprehensive protection, if the car were to speed up, wouldn't the car crash and people die? Poplar Fruit quickly stood up and went to see how his daughter was doing. However, before Poplar Fruit went to Kiki's side, Kiki sat up by herself. She didn't cry. She touched her head, then lowered her head and touched the leg of the coffee table. Then she laughed happily. Poplar Fruit squatted down and touched his daughter's little head. When he didn't find any swelling, he was relieved. However, when he saw her laughing foolishly, Poplar Fruit was both angry and amused. He rubbed her hair and scolded her in his heart. Little fool. Poplar Fruit went back to reading. Not long after he sat down, the harassment came. Kiki actually abandoned all her toys and crawled over on her hands and feet. Like a little pig, she buried her head in the crook of her father's arm. Her big eyes looked around to see what her father was doing. Yangwa patted her little, but that didn't have much meat, and then carried her out. Kiki had a persevering spirit. Just as Poplar Fruit put her on the ground, she crawled over again. However, this time Poplar Fruit didn't let her have her way. Poplar Fruit reached out his right hand and blocked Kiki's little head. No matter how hard Kiki tried to crawl, she couldn't get over. After struggling for a while, Chi-Chi turned around and crawled back to her toy mountain with a pout. Then she began to play again. Poplar Fruit checked on Kiki from time to time. Perhaps they had a telepathic connection, but when Poplar Fruit looked up, Kiki coincidentally turned her head. Seeing her father's gaze, Kiki giggled. Ever since she found out that her father was watching her, Kiki started to be restless again. He didn't know how her little brain worked. She actually knew how to tease her father at such a young age. Of course, it was also possible that Kiki was just doing something that made her happy. When Poplar Fruit looked up again, Kiki was gone. She hid. Poplar Fruit only needed to glance around to find the little rascal's trace. Chi-Chi squeezed herself into a small gap between the sofa and the back wall. However, her hiding was too unprofessional. Like an ostrich escaping for its life, she squeezed her head into the small gap without caring about her tail. Her little butt was still swaying outside. Poplar Fruit found it funny and didn't expose her. He very cooperatively called out, "Kiki." At this time, Kiki squeezed out of the gap in the sofa and raised her little head. Poplar Fruit saw this and couldn't stop laughing. She looked at her father leaning forward and back, and her big eyes revealed a proud smile. However, she didn't know that Poplar Fruit was laughing because her current appearance was too funny. Her face was covered in dust, and her thin hair was all standing up due to the static electricity from the sofa. She was exactly like a disheveled head and a dusty face. She was just like a little beggar. Too cute. She was cute, but he had to give her a bath again. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 128. Before taking a bath, Poplar Fruit still had one more thing to do, and that was to feed Kiki rice paste. Otherwise, it would be sticky after the bath. Poplar Fruit had returned to his hometown, and his mother had taught him how to make rice paste. When Poplar Fruit learned that babies at this age had to eat rice paste as a supplement, he was sweating profusely. He had always thought that babies only drank milk when they were breastfeeding. In fact, when Kiki was 6 months old, Poplar Fruit should have made some supplement food for her every night. On one hand, supplement food could supplement the baby's nutrition. On the other hand, it could also train Kiki's chewing and swallowing ability. Although it was a little late to start now, it was not too late to mend the pen after the sheep had been lost. Before reading the book, the rice had been washed and soaked in a small pot. After running for so long, it had become soft. He lit the fire and boiled it. At this time, Poplar Fruit was not idle. He took out an egg, washed it, and boiled it in another pot. The boiled egg was peeled while it was hot. Although it was not the first time he peeled the egg, the hot egg still scalded Poplar Fruit and made Kiki, who was next to him, laugh. The peeled egg was white and tender, just like Kiki's skin. It was like an exquisite work of art. But the hateful Poplar Fruit still wanted to destroy it. He peeled the egg white, and while peeling he stuffed the broken egg white into his mouth. He also licked his fingers. Egg white was not a good delicacy for a baby who was still very young. The baby's digestive tract barrier was not fully developed, and the protein molecules in the egg white were small. It was easy for it to enter the blood through the intestinal mucosa, and then it would cause allergic reactions, such as skin eczema and hives. In the end, only the round egg yolk was left. Poplar Fruit did not even let go of the egg yolk. He peeled the egg yolk, put half of it into the bowl, and ate the other half. Kiki had just eaten supplement food, and there was too much egg yolk, which was not easy to digest. Poplar Fruit used a spoon to crush the remaining egg yolk into a paste, and put it in a bowl to wait for the rice in the pot to cook. It was not enough to cook it into porridge. Poplar Fruit simmered it slowly for a long time. When he and Kiki were so hungry that their stomachs were growling, the porridge was soft and soft. This was called rice paste. The Young family's rice paste was made with a special recipe, which was egg yolk paste. Although it was said to be a special recipe, it was just Poplar Fruit for his own entertainment. This way of eating was everywhere. Poplar Fruit scooped the egg yolk out of the bowl and into the pot. Then he poured in the milk and shook it slowly. Although the steps looked complicated, in reality, the only thing left was less than half a bowl of egg yolk rice paste. It was pitifully little, but Kiki was really too small, so she could only eat so little. Poplar Fruit had thought of making more and eating the rest. However, after eating it once, Poplar Fruit felt that he did not like this bland liquid food, so he decisively gave up the idea. While waiting for the boiling rice paste to cool down, Poplar Fruit heated up the leftovers from lunch. After the food was heated up, the rice paste could be fed to Kiki. Feeding Kiki rice paste was a long tug-of-war. Now that Kiki had tasted it a few times, she finally understood that rice paste was edible. It was not like the first time she tried it. She closed her mouth and refused to open it. In the end, the rice paste was all over her mouth and face, but she still did not eat it. However, Kiki was still not used to eating rice paste. How could it taste better than milk? Milk was not so troublesome. She could just suck on the pacifier and drink it without any hindrance. Rice paste was different. Although it was liquid, there was still a volume. If Kiki did not chew it, it would be difficult for her to swallow it. Come Kiki, it's time for dinner. Poplar Fruit tried to tempt Kiki with his voice, but Kiki did not open her mouth. Kiki usually loved to laugh, but when she sat in the baby chair specially prepared for her, she subconsciously pursed her lips. Poplar Fruit moved his face closer and stared into her watery eyes. He threatened. Kiki, open your mouth, do you hear me? Are you going to be obedient? I'm telling you, don't force me to make a move. If he is strong, he is strong. A cool breeze brushes the hills. If he is tyrannical, he is tyrannical. The moon shines over the river. Kiki seemed to understand these two proverbs. No matter how Poplar Fruit threatened her, she did not open her mouth. I'm really going to make a move. You're forcing me. Poplar Fruit said fiercely. Poplar Fruit put down the bowl and spoon, rolled up his right sleeve, he did not have a sleeve at all, and then swung his right hand in a circle in the air. After swinging his right hand in a circle, he put his hand in his trouser pocket and took out his phone. Finally, he plugged the phone into a small speaker next to him. Poplar Fruit snickered and snapped his fingers. He shouted, "Music!" A pleasant piece of music came out from the speaker of the small speaker. Chi-Chi immediately became spirited. She turned her head and focused all of her attention on the small speaker that was emitting the sound. Her ears perked up, and she listened carefully without missing a single word. Kiki loved listening to music the most. No matter if it was light music or songs, no matter if it was children's songs or pop songs, as long as the melody was beautiful, she would listen to it all. Moreover, when Kiki was listening to music, she was very engrossed. No one could disturb her. It could be said that she would not be moved even if the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. As she listened, Kiki's little mouth opened involuntarily. Poplar Fruit, whose evil plan succeeded, touched his chin with a sly smile. Then he used Kiki's little spoon to scoop up some egg yolk rice paste and gently put it into Kiki's mouth. When it touched Kiki's little tongue, she could not help but close her mouth. This way, when Poplar Fruit pulled out the spoon, Kiki had already put the egg yolk rice paste into her mouth. Kiki's mouth had the egg yolk rice paste that she did not like to eat. She glanced at this heartless father of hers with dissatisfaction. However, listening to the music was more important. Kiki was a magnanimous person, and did not bicker with her father. Her little mouth pouted and moved up and down for a while before she swallowed it. Poplar Fruit picked up his food and sat at the side to eat. When Kiki opened her mouth, he immediately fed her another spoonful of soup. Just like that, Kiki ate almost half of the egg yolk rice paste quite quickly. However, Poplar Fruit then thought that if this continued, would Kiki be as absent-minded when eating in the future? Thus he got up and turned off the music. This time, Kiki was unhappy. She pouted her little mouth and refused to open it. Poplar Fruit racked his brains before he finally let her take a bite. After that bite, Poplar Fruit immediately played the music as a reward. The music only played one Xiao Duan before Poplar Fruit paused it again, ignoring Kiki's tantrum. He waited until Kiki ate the egg yolk rice paste before he was willing to put down the music. Although it took more than an hour to finish this small bowl of egg yolk rice paste, Poplar Fruit wanted Kiki to understand that if you want to get, you have to give. No, Poplar Fruit actually did not think that far. He only wanted to cultivate Kiki's habit of taking the initiative to eat. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 129. Ever since Kiki started to grow teeth, Poplar Fruit began to take the trouble to check on her every day. He wished he could take a ruler and make notes for Kiki every day. Later, Song Jiwen couldn't stand it anymore. Whenever he saw Poplar Fruit showing signs of opening Kiki's mouth, he took 2 spoons from the kitchen and rushed over. He wanted to use the spoons to pry open Poplar Fruit's mouth and let him have a taste. It had been more than half a month since the press conference in Beijing. The sales results of the Chinese version of the biography of Steve Jobs had also been released. It was indeed very good. If you were modest, you could use the word hot to describe it. If you were honest, you could even use the word people come out to describe it. Dongxin Publishing was finally relieved from the tension and busyness. They also had time to send over 10 copies of Poplar Fruit sample books. Poplar Fruit lovingly stroked the book that seemed to emit the fragrance of ink. He sighed. The hard work of translating this book for more than a month was finally worth it. Although he was as tired as a dog for more than a month and didn't earn much, he felt the highest sense of achievement. Poplar Fruit didn't keep these 10 copies of the sample books for himself. He sent one to his family. Although they couldn't understand it, it was still an achievement for him. He wanted them to share this happiness. Poplar Fruit sent 2 copies to Yao Dehua, who stood out to support him when he was at the heart of the struggle. He also sent 1 copy to Duan Xueqing and Song Jiwen. He also sent 1 copy to his basketball buddy, Uncle Su Kaijin. Uncle Su Kaijin was a cadre in the Department of Education. He had been promoted recently, and could now be called Director Su, although he was only a deputy director. After becoming a deputy director, Uncle Su Kaijin didn't have much time to play basketball with Poplar Fruit. However, the relationship between the 2 families was very good. Poplar Fruit also visited him often. Once, when Poplar Fruit talked about the book he had translated being published, Uncle Su Kaijin laughed and scolded him for not bringing over a copy of his published book. So when Poplar Fruit received the book, he sent it to Uncle Su Kaijin. Uncle Su Kaijin had been in the field of education for many years, and could be considered half a scholar. When he received the book from Poplar Fruit, he couldn't put it down. On the one hand, it was translated by Poplar Fruit. On the other hand, this book was also a reference for him. After all, Poplar Fruit was also a feudal lord. He Kaijin, for the time being, to give it to whom to give it to in the future. The sales were booming, but at the same time, there were some disputes about the translation of the book. The most discussed topic was still the farewell love letter. Countless literati and poets rolled up their sleeves and went into battle. Translated versions of various styles and genres were hot on the internet. However, these could not hide the brilliance of Poplar Fruit. Very soon, the debate was drowned by the tide of good reviews. Everyone stopped thinking about the translation problem and really immersed themselves in the book. Through Poplar Fruit and the others, they built a bridge for everyone to understand the legend of Steve Jobs, who was not known to others. Poplar Fruit's heroic appearance at the press conference not only increased his Weibo fans by hundreds of thousands, but also brought him some unexpected interesting things. For example, Poplar Fruit received many invitations to film and film shows. Of course, they were only movies and shows that were not famous. He had not even heard of the director's name. Of course, Poplar Fruit rejected them. He had no intention of stepping into the entertainment industry. Now he just wanted to be a handsome man quietly. That was a digression. After becoming famous, Poplar Fruit also received many calls for interviews. In the end, he rejected most of them and only accepted interviews from Yangqing Evening News and Tungsa News Network. Yangqing Evening News mainly wanted to understand the process of Poplar Fruit's translation of the book and some of Poplar Fruit's thoughts. As a state-owned newspaper, their interview was standard, and the final report was also standard. Poplar Fruit bought the newspaper to read. After flipping through it for a long time, he saw his own report in a small tofu block at the bottom right corner of page A5. It was less than 300 words. Poplar Fruit could only laugh at the shabby Yangqing Evening News Network. At that time, he chose Yangqing Evening News mainly because it was one of the most influential newspapers in the city where he lived. However, he did not expect it to be so small. It was so small that a non-professional news portal was better than it. Yes, Tungsun News Network had indeed shown a lot of sincerity. Not only were they well prepared for the reporters, but they also sent a professional photography team. They were also planning to make Poplar Fruit's news into a new program. Yes, this program was newly planned by Tungsun's news department. It was called A Day in China. It was different from reality. This news program was led by pictures and supplemented by text narration. It was designed to provide Chinese netizens with a platform where they could freely express their emotions and find resonance. This program did not need reporters or interviews. Instead, it solicited a wide range of manuscripts. Only then could the authenticity of this program be reflected, because only the people and things that really happened around them could make people feel emotional. However, they still needed to send reporters to interview this program in the early stages to make a name for themselves. Only then could they receive quality pictures. Poplar Fruit had provided them with excellent material. First of all, Poplar Fruit was a young man who had graduated more than a year ago. It could be said that he had not stepped into society for a long time. Young people at this stage should be young and inexperienced. They should still be facing society and their own future in a daze. They should still be receiving training and setbacks from their previous jobs. However, Poplar Fruit was different from most people. He had already walked his own path. Although it was not glorious, he had achieved a lot. He could earn more than 100,000 yuan a month as a fledgling. Such a news gimmick would definitely attract a lot of clicks. Poplar Fruit did not have any objections to Tungsun wanting to film his daily life. However, he put forward a condition, and that was to advertise Xindao Translation Company in his report. Or rather, it could be said that it was product placement. After some discussion, Tungsun agreed not to use the words XX Company to replace the name of Xindao Translation Company. Poplar Fruit did this to return the favor. He did not want to owe others a favor. Yao Dehua had done him a favor, so he had to seize the opportunity to repay him. Tungsun was not doing a losing business. They had obtained Poplar Fruit's permission to temporarily stay in Poplar Fruit's house and learn more about Poplar Fruit's daily life. Of course, they were not allowed to report many private matters. The reporter who interviewed Poplar Fruit was called Dong Run. He was not simple. He used to be the head reporter of a newspaper. Later on, he jumped ship to Tungsun. Dong Runsu was known for his unique vision. Under his digging, the unknown side of Poplar Fruit was peeled off layer by layer like an onion, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to. Chapter 130. Tungsun News Network's new program had yet to be launched, and Poplar Fruit, who had just sent the reporters away, had yet to enjoy 2 days of peace. Ardel, a French friend he had met in the capital, had come over. When he was in the capital, Poplar Fruit had promised Ardel to be his model and let him design a set of men's fashion. He had not expected Ardel to be so impatient. They had not even been apart for a month, and he had already rushed over from France. Givenchy had his own shop in Yangcheng, and he had also given a house to Ardel to use as a temporary studio. Why was it temporary? When Poplar Fruit arrived, he saw that the studio was too simple and crude. Although the house was a 2-story building in the Creative Technology Park, the interior decoration was simply undecorated. It was a rough house, and the floor was made of rough cement. Although it was not as good as his studio in France, Ardel seemed to like this style quite a lot. In his eyes, an overly luxurious studio would affect his creations, because if his eyes were filled with other people's designs, his mind would not be pure enough. Therefore, when he arrived, he only asked people to arrange for daily necessities on the second floor. The first floor was completely random. The drawings were strewn everywhere, and the various brushes on the table were crooked. He did not clean up at all, and no one dared to do so. When Ardel was at work, he was a geek who flew into a rage. The only compromise Ardel made was to put a huge crib in the studio on the first floor. The crib was so big that Kiki could crawl around and play in it. Even though Poplar Fruit strongly objected, he still asked people to buy a lot of toys for Kiki to play in. Ardel's actions had nothing to do with whether he liked children or not. His original intention was not to please Kiki. He mainly wanted Poplar Fruit to be at ease and cooperate with his work, instead of thinking about his daughter all day long and wanting to go home all day long. This showed how important Poplar Fruit was to Ardal. Poplar Fruit had a lot of questions about this. Isn't it just a model? Why did he act like he cared so much? Poplar Fruit was not a professional model. There were so many excellent models in the world, and there were so many models with Asian faces. Why did Ardal favor Poplar Fruit so much? Your temperament is one of a kind. Ardal explained to Yanghua without raising his head while holding the paintbrush in his hand. What Ardal liked was Poplar Fruit's youthful and academic temperament. Among them, the most important was academics. As the old saying goes, if you have knowledge, you will naturally be magnificent. When Poplar Fruit came out of school, he did not have such a temperament. It was only after he started to read a lot and gained a lot of knowledge and experience that he developed naturally. There was confidence here, but it was not entirely confidence. There was also a scholarly air and a rich and beautiful complexion. This was a temperament that radiated from the inside out. If one was not an industry leader or a leader in the field, it was impossible to fake it. However, to reach such heights, how many people could have the youthful vitality of Poplar Fruit? How many people could have the almost perfect figure of Poplar Fruit? In fact, most of the people who fell in the academic field were crooked, weren't they? Looking for the best among them to be good-looking was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Ardal knew that although China was the most developed country in Asia, more and more people had received education. Among them, intellectuals had gradually gained the upper hand. These people were the mainstream consumers of the Asian fashion industry. If one wanted to make good works that would sell well and win awards, the key was to cater to their tastes. There was a strange way of thinking in the fashion industry. They did not consider what kind of fashion the audience wanted. Instead, they told the audience what kind of fashion they should follow through a group of people who were the most knowledgeable about fashion and the most creative new styles. There were pros and cons to this way of thinking. The pros were that they were the ones who truly understood fashion, not the outsiders guiding the insiders. The cons were that it was easy to cause the so-called fashion to be greatly separated from reality. It was like some abstract paintings. How could a work of art that others could not understand be called a work of art? A long time ago, Ardal had some ideas. After seeing Poplar Fruit, his ideas finally took shape. That was to use his own understanding and the potential needs of the market to design a real fashion that belonged to Asia. Yanghua was very important to Ardal because he was the source of Ardal's inspiration. At the same time, he also represented a limit. Ardal's inspiration couldn't run wild like a wild horse. Everything had to be kept within a limit. But Poplar Fruit was not very important to Ardal, because most of the time, Ardal sat in front of his big table with a pen in his hand. His eyes were looking at the drawings, but his mind was drifting somewhere else. Poplar Fruit was only useful when Ardal needed to organize his thoughts and make gestures to design clothes. So he felt very awkward. He could not go anywhere else, so he could only wait in this house for Ardal's call. So Poplar Fruit simply moved his own laptop into the house. When Ardal needed it, he would stand up and let him play with it. When not needed, Poplar Fruit would sit next to him, doing his own translation, or playing with Kiki. Poplar Fruit felt that this kind of cameo was quite strange. When Kiki was there, it was inevitable that she would be a little noisy. She would laugh when she was playing, and yell when she was unhappy. There was even one time when Poplar Fruit took a little longer to go to the bathroom. Kiki, who was playing with her toys, could not find her father, and cried loudly. After spending some time with Ardal, Poplar Fruit found that Ardal's temper was very strange. Not only was he anxious and irritable, but he was also fussy about many details, but he did not care about trifles in life. But no matter how noisy Kiki was, Ardal did not show any impatience. His tolerance for Poplar Fruit and Kiki was incredible, even to his assistant. But Song Jiwen did not have this kind of treatment. He excitedly waved his phone and ran to Poplar Fruit. As soon as he entered the house, he yelled, "Lao Gua, you're on fire!" His unrestrained voice immediately attracted the anger of Ardal. Ardal, who was pulling his hair in annoyance, immediately waved his big broom and used his ultimate move. I'll chop your face until it's full of peach blossoms. Before Song Ji-won could say another word, he threw him out. Poplar Fruit was on fire. After a few days of production, Tungsun finally released the first episode of A Day in China. A large number of pictures, accompanied by emotional words, depicted the track of Poplar Fruit's day in detail. In fact, his life was very ordinary. But Dong-run's unique vision and the photographer's ingenious angle of shooting vividly reflected Poplar Fruit's self-discipline, gentleness and love. In this set of pictures, they also prepared content that would interest different audiences. The young couple, who were still struggling to find a house, saw Poplar Fruit carefully raising their daughter, and the child's healthy and happy growth. They understood their expectations for the fruit of their love, and they became more determined and harmonious to build a warm home. The university students, who were muddling along in school day after day, saw Poplar Fruit's difficult life after graduation, and after having a child. They understood that happiness could not be obtained simply by daydreaming. They cherished their time more, and put in more effort to pursue their own futures. The blue-collar and white-collar workers, who were already working but gradually lost their direction in life, saw Poplar Fruit's unique path and success. They understood that a person must have their own ideals. Perhaps they would also dig out the dreams they once harbored in their memories, and take advantage of their youth to give themselves a chance to pursue their dreams. Even more people were able to share Yonggua's happiness from this series of photos. Even if they didn't understand anything, their lives that day had a little more radiance. They would smile at the people around them, even strangers. They would pass on this happiness to others. Of course, the effect that Poplar Fruit wanted was also achieved. Those who were interested in English or translation, regardless of whether they were professionals or not, could all see that Poplar Fruit's high income came from the translation tasks of Cinda Translation Company. Poplar Fruit, a young man who had just left school for more than a year, could earn more than 100,000 yuan a month. Why couldn't they? It was just a name placement, but the advertising effect was already very effective. Because of this news, more and more people started to learn more about Cinda Translation Company. That was enough. Cinda Translation Company was really good. They had a huge market and customer resources, a reasonable and tiered salary system, and an excellent operation team and mentor group. Through Cinda Translation Company's platform, both amateur and professional translators could get what they wanted: training and remuneration. On this platform, as long as you were willing to work hard, you would definitely earn money. Full-time bronze medal translators could earn 4,000 to 8,000 yuan a month, and silver medal translators could earn up to 20,000 to 30,000 yuan a month. As for the gold medal translators, it depends on their capabilities. Normally, 50,000 renminbi a month is the lowest salary for a gold medal translator. For someone like Yonggua, who is very capable and fast at translating, earning 150,000 to 200,000 renminbi a month is not a dream. Therefore, Cinda Translation Company did not lack ability, nor did they lack the conditions to attract translators. It was just that in the big market of the country, they still lacked a little fame. And this time, it was an important opportunity for Yao Dehua to spread out his business. Later on, Yao Dehua also sighed with emotion. It was just a drop of water, but Yonggua had repaid it with a gushing spring, and even a gushing tide. This friendship was really worth it. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Everyone, please use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 131. Poplar Fruit became popular for a while because of the news. Not only did the number of his Weibo fans soar again, but it also showed on his mobile phone. During that time, Poplar Fruit's mobile phone was almost exploding with calls. All kinds of advertisement invitations and interview requests flooded in. Within 2 days, Poplar Fruit had charged his mobile phone 10 times. This was an iPhone with a long standby time. 10 times. It was obvious how frequent the calls were. In the end, Poplar Fruit couldn't stand it anymore. He took out his SIM card and threw it into the sewer. He changed his SIM card and only gave his phone number to his family and friends. Only then did he finally have some peace. He couldn't go home for the time being, so he packed his things early and moved to Ardal's studio. He ate and slept with him. Of course they shared a different bed. It could be considered as a small support for Ardal's work. During this period of boredom, Poplar Fruit taught Kiki a few new words. This allowed Kiki to learn more expressions. For example, when they were eating, if Poplar Fruit deliberately moved the milk bottle away, Kiki would anxiously say, "Eat, eat, eat," to call back her unscrupulous father's hand. For example, when she wanted something, Kiki would shout, "Yes, yes." Poplar Fruit would often tease her. "What do you want?" Kiki would be so anxious that her little face would twist. There were also other words such as mama ma. Kiki's pronunciation was not very accurate. Uncle, brother, grandpa, and so on. One interesting thing was that Poplar Fruit actually taught Kiki to say grandpa in French. Père. When Kiki shouted this word in front of Ardal, although it was not accurate enough, Ardal's gloomy face, which had been gloomy for several days, suddenly became as cold as ice in early spring. It was as if the ice melted under the sun, and a smile bloomed on his face again. The reason why Ardal's face had been gloomy for several days was that he had encountered a bottleneck that was difficult to break through. He wanted to make a breakthrough by designing clothes for Poplar Fruit. But after a few days of hard work, he realized that he had taken it for granted. Yes, he did have a lot of inspiration because of the Poplar Fruit, but these inspirations were actually influenced by his artistic education and his own design ideas over the years. They either lacked creativity or were too innovative, but the effect was not satisfactory. Poplar Fruit didn't know much about fashion. He thought that the clothes designed by Ardal were beautiful enough, but Ardal still took the trouble to redo them. Many of the finished clothes were cut by him. It's a bit wasteful. Poplar Fruit sometimes looked at the basket of discarded works and couldn't help but complain in his heart. It didn't matter what Poplar Fruit thought. For an artist, if he wasn't satisfied with his own work, how could he expect others to be satisfied? So Ardal fell into an infinite dilemma. He sat in front of the workbench all day long with his chin in his hands. His white hair was almost pulled out by him. When he was in a bad mood, it would also affect his appetite. When Poplar Fruit first came, he made Chinese food for Ardal several times. Ardal was full of praise and ate without caring about his image. But now he couldn't eat anything. He left in a hurry after eating a few pieces of bread. This state lasted for more than a week. At that time, Ardal began to doubt himself. Can I still design good works? He even had the thought of giving up. It was the magical Kiki that changed him. At that time, Poplar Fruit was holding Kiki on the first floor. He wanted to bring Kiki to Ardal and make him happy. Kiki's arrival also freed Ardal from a large number of manuscripts. The old man stood up and kindly wanted to hold Kiki. Poplar Fruit held Kiki across the table. Because of a moment of carelessness, Kiki's little feet touched the black paint on the table. Then Kiki's little feet dragged all the way, leaving black spots and thick traces on the white drawing paper. "Oh, I'm sorry." Poplar Fruit was shocked. He picked up Kiki again and hurriedly cleaned up the table for Ardal. In a panic, he apologized to Ardal in Chinese. "Don't move," Ardal suddenly said excitedly. "I'm sorry. I accidentally dirted your paper. I'll clean it up for you right away." Poplar Fruit finally switched back to French this time. No. Ardal protected the paper like a mother hen protecting her chicks. "I think I've got an idea," he said. "Don't make any noise." Poplar Fruit was stunned. He hurriedly carried Kiki to the side. He looked down and saw that Kiki, who was very active, had used her little black feet to draw a few black ink marks on his clothes. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Well, his clothes were ruined. Ardal was still staring at the drawing paper in a daze. Poplar Fruit carried Kiki to the bathroom to wash off the paint that was still on her feet. Poplar Fruit anxiously walked out with Kiki in his arms. Suddenly, a black shadow rushed over. Poplar Fruit couldn't help but want to throw the shadow away with Tai Chi. Fortunately, he saw clearly that it was Ardal. Ardal happily ran up to Chi-Chi and kissed her on the cheek. He held Poplar Fruit's empty right hand and said happily, "I figured it out. I figured it out." As he said that, He dragged Poplar Fruit to the front of the workbench and pointed at the drawing paper to show it to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit calmly pulled his right hand out and carefully looked at the drawing paper that Kiki had just ruined. The black marks were still there, but they weren't as messy as before. Ardell must have added some dots and new marks. Just like the finishing touch, the drawing had become very beautiful. Poplar Fruit didn't know what was so beautiful about the drawing. He only felt that the pattern formed by the combination of black dots and lines exuded a generous and elegant charm. This, Chi-Chi squeaked. This was her way of showing her father what she was doing. Kiki pointed at the drawing proudly, as if she was telling her father that it was her masterpiece. Poplar Fruit ignored her. He smiled at Ardell and said, "Congratulations, Ardell. I think you've found the feeling of this design." Ardell laughed and said, "No, I have to thank Luo Chi." Kiki's nickname was very awkward in his pronunciation, so he called her by her name. "She gave me the inspiration." It turns out that ink painting style is the best way to show the temperament of a scholar. This was just a sketch, and the real design had just begun. However, with a breakthrough, Ardell progressed very quickly. It only took 4 days for the design of the clothes to basically take shape. Poplar Fruit's fitting also made Ardell very satisfied. Poplar Fruit didn't mind the trouble. He went to Yangcheng to take a few sets of street photos for Ardell. He also took a lot of photos for the promotional material of the clothes in the future. This time, the cooperation between the two lasted until the middle of December. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. "Everyone, please use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to." Chapter 132. There was no need to discuss whether Poplar Fruit was a blockhead or not. Perhaps it was because he spent too much time on Kiki that he became very slow when it came to relationships. Don't worry too much. He has always been like this. Love just needs to wait patiently, and everything will come naturally. Duan Xueqing thought in her heart. Sometimes she would imagine a happy future with Poplar Fruit. In Duan Xueqing's imagination, there was the most romantic wedding there. It was every girl's dream to have a beautiful wedding. In this aspect, Duan Xueqing had a unique advantage. Because she had money. She didn't need Poplar Fruit to work hard to make money. With her private money, it was enough for her to book the beautiful Bali Island. In her imagination, she was wearing a white feather wedding dress, and Poplar Fruit was wearing a handsome suit. Poplar Fruit was holding her hand, and the two of them slowly walked across the wooden bridge covered with a red carpet. Next to them, their friends and relatives were driving boats, rippling on the crystal-clear sea, and scattering red rose petals along the bridge. At the end of the bridge, in the middle of the sea, there was a beautiful artificial island. Her dear father and mother were standing there to welcome them. There was also an amiable priest, who would read the vows to Poplar Fruit and her under the arch full of white lilies, and all the relatives and friends present would witness and bless their happiness. Duan Xueqing would also imagine their future life, which must be full of sweetness of love. Yes, they didn't need to be spectacular, they didn't need the attention of the world, and they didn't need to have a great career. As long as the two of them could hold hands and grow old together, that would be enough. Their life must be full of poetry. In the morning, she was woken up by a kiss from her husband. For breakfast, it was porridge that he cooked with love. Work was counting the time and waiting to see him as soon as possible. When she came home from work, she was hugged by a big hug and a hug that she could talk about her hard work. Dinner was a romantic candlelight dinner. Taking a stroll was holding hands under the starry sky. In the last night, it was the shyness of love. It must be such a wonderful thing to be with the person you love. Duan Xueqing only needed to imagine a little bit to fill her heart with sweetness and brighten her mood. Everything she saw was blissful. Therefore, even if Poplar Fruit didn't understand her feelings for the time being, it didn't matter. She was willing to continue waiting until the moment she could hug him. Duan Xueqing was like a princess in the Duan family. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was the bright moon surrounded by stars. Her world was as simple as a fairy tale. However, was love really something that could be waited for? Perhaps this was the case in the beautiful fairy tale world. After dinner, It was almost time for Duan Xueqing to go home. Winter nights were not like summer nights. At night, the cold wind whistled outside. Other than those who had to work hard to run small businesses, there was almost no one on the streets. It was empty, and the whole world was like the end of the world. Poplar Fruit put the sleeping Kiki in the crib, put on his coat, and sent Duan Xueqing to the entrance of the neighborhood to take a taxi. After getting out of the elevator and walking downstairs, Duan Xueqing pointed at a few bedboards piled up downstairs and said to Poplar Fruit, "What's wrong with this?" Poplar Fruit looked at it and smiled. "Oh, this. I heard that a tenant on the third floor is not living there recently. He's been moving these days." He casually touched the dismantled bedboard. It seemed to be new. Then he scratched his head and said, "It seems to be new. Could it be that it doesn't belong to that tenant?" Duan Xueqing stood quietly at the side, her hands tucked into her cute pink bunny gloves. The reason why she said tucked was because this pair of cotton gloves was connected to a long cotton string, hanging down from her neck like two small pockets. Poplar Fruit continued his analysis. "It should be a new one from the property management. He'll change it when he moves out. The property management here is pretty good. They don't use things that others have used to fool people. When I came over, the bedboards were all new. Of course it was good. This was a high-end apartment building. The rent was 1 or 2,000 yuan more expensive than ordinary houses outside. If the service was not good, would people still come to rent it? One had to know that those who could afford to rent here were not poor people. What they wanted was a more comfortable environment. Haha, isn't it much better than the place you're living in now?" Poplar Fruit looked at Duan Xueqing and laughed. Duan Xueqing nodded her head lightly and answered simply. Poplar Fruit walked with her and said, "The property management in the neighborhood you're living in now is self-managed. Those uncles and aunties look good, but in terms of business model, they're much worse than professional property management companies. But it doesn't matter. Think about it, you only have a few dozen yuan a month in property management. But if the neighborhood can be clean, the street lights, security, and so on are okay, that's enough, right?" Poplar Fruit talked a lot. When he stopped for a moment, Duan Xueqing suddenly stopped and said softly, "This place is really good." Yanggua didn't know why Duan Xueqing was standing there. She turned around and saw that under Duan Xueqing's neat bangs, a pair of beautiful eyes were shining in the dark night sky, as if there was some kind of emotion flowing within them. "How about I rent it too?" Duan Xueqing hesitated and asked tentatively. Although Duan Xueqing's words were very vague, Poplar Fruit still understood. Duan Xueqing meant that she also wanted to rent a place with such a good environment. "Okay." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "If you rent it, we'll be close and we can take care of each other. Moreover, if you come over, we can even work together. Look at that guy Song Jiwen, he comes over every day to eat and drink. Look at how fat he is." Feeling that this example was not right, he added, "I'm not saying that you can eat and drink. I think that eating together is also a very happy thing." Duan Xueqing nodded seriously. She was so happy that her eyes curved. In fact, eating was only one aspect. Duan Xueqing hoped that after moving over, she could be closer to Poplar Fruit. She did not have to see him every once in a while, and she did not have to rely on Poplar Fruit's warm smile to get through the cold winter. Poplar Fruit waved his fist and said with a smile, "But the rent here is not cheap. If you want to rent a place here, you really have to work hard and earn more money." The night wind was getting stronger and stronger. Duan Xueqing's hair fluttered in the wind, and her face was red from the cold. She did not hear what Poplar Fruit said at the end and just nodded. The weather was getting colder and colder. Poplar Fruit waved at Duan Xueqing and asked her to hurry up. Duan Xueqing covered the scarf around her neck and quickly followed Poplar Fruit. "When can I be held by him, or even hugged? That way, no matter how strong the wind is, no matter how cold the night is, it will not be scary." Begging for monthly votes. Begging for recommendations. Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. Greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 133. After Duan Xueqing went back, She really started asking about the rent of the apartment. Poplar Fruit's apartment was still in short supply. Since there were people moving out now, if possible, they wanted to quickly get a place. Before the Chinese New Year, Duan Xueqing was a little busy at work. If she moved there before then, she wouldn't have time to adapt to the changes. It wasn't realistic, but she wanted to occupy a place first. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any place left in the future. Duan Xueqing had signed a 1-year contract with the old house. It was still a long time before the contract expired. However, she didn't care about the deposit of a few thousand yuan. She also didn't care about the rent that would be wasted temporarily. After all, Duan Xueqing was a little rich woman. She still had a huge sum of money in her hands. After Duan Xueqing's mother went back last time, she couldn't help but come over again. She felt sorry for her daughter, so she gave her daughter 2 million yuan in pocket money and told her to rent a better apartment and buy a car and clothes for herself. Mother Duan felt that as the little princess of a rich family, it was fine if Duan Xueqing didn't squander money. But how could she be so thrifty and strict with herself? If the old folks in her hometown found out about this, they might criticize her behind her back. They might say that the Duan family favored boys over girls and didn't treat their daughter as a human. Poplar Fruit didn't know what Duan Xueqing was thinking. He thought that Duan Xueqing was just saying it casually. How long had it been since Duan Xueqing graduated? Even if she was a civil servant, it would be impossible for her to live in a high-end apartment that cost a few thousand yuan a month in less than half a year. She wasn't like Song Jiwen, who was the second generation of a government official. Her family didn't give her money to support her. He didn't know that Duan Xueqing wasn't the second generation of a government official, but she was a rich second generation who was richer than the second generation of a government official. Song Jiwen only had a little bit of money, but Duan Xueqing was the real deal. The pocket money her family gave her every year was enough to buy a house in Yangcheng. In any case, Poplar Fruit didn't pay too much attention to the development of this matter. He was actually very busy. Although he was a freelancer, there were still a lot of miscellaneous matters. As soon as he brought Kiki to the hospital for a checkup, Zhang Yujie called him. Little Guozi, just as the phone was placed next to her ear, Zhang Yujie's long and sweet voice sounded from the speaker. Big sister has been busy these past few days. If I don't call you, you won't call big sister? I'm so sad. After returning from Beijing, Zhang Yujie called Poplar Fruit more often. She called Poplar Fruit almost every 1 or 2 days. The reason was that she wanted to keep in touch with Poplar Fruit, who was a powerful translator. As for the content of the call, it was never about this topic. Zhang Yujie would tell Poplar Fruit about all the interesting things that happened to her in the past few days. Life, work, and even what she saw on the news became the topic of conversation between her and Poplar Fruit. Zhang Yujie's ability to chat was much better than Duan Xueqing's. Duan Xueqing was very cold and didn't like to chat for long periods of time. She would even use words like and oh to replace the actual content of her answers. So sometimes Poplar Fruit and her chat would turn into staring at each other. Duan Xueqing liked this feeling, but Poplar Fruit didn't care. Zhang Yujie was different. This Beijing girl also had the characteristics of Beijing people who were particularly talkative. She talked endlessly, but she also paid attention to other people's feelings. So when Poplar Fruit talked to her on the phone for almost an hour, he didn't feel impatient at all. The onlooker sees more clearly than the person involved. Poplar Fruit didn't feel anything special. He treated Zhang Yujie with the attitude of a friend. But if there was a third person listening to them, they would be amazed at the wonderful relationship between the two of them. They were one step closer than friends, but they were still far away from being lovers. Maybe if Zhang Yujie didn't take the initiative, they might not even be able to take this step. However, Zhang Yujie's sweet tone really gave Poplar Fruit goosebumps. In Poplar Fruit's impression, she had always been a short-haired, capable and straightforward queen. Now it seemed that this queen was also a changeable queen. Please speak human language, Miss Zhang Yujie. After the two of them became familiar with each other, Poplar Fruit talked to her quite casually. Humph. Zhang Yujie snorted lazily to express her dissatisfaction. Her voice was so languid that Poplar Fruit could imagine her curling up in the warm quilt and pouting. I need you to help me with some ideas. Zheng Yujie changed back to her normal tone. Poplar Fruit asked curiously, what ideas? He thought for a moment and then said, is it about the book import report you mentioned a few days ago? Zheng Yujie told him that at the end of the year, Dongxin Publishing not only had to do the annual summary and take stock of the publishing and income of the publishing house for the year, but also start to prepare the publishing plan for the next year. For Dongxin Publishing, the import of foreign books was the most important, and the book import report at the end of the year was also very important, which was related to the income of the next year. Although it was just a plan, and the decision was still in the hands of the chief editor and the president, every deputy chief editor needed to discuss a series of books with their subordinates, and Zheng Yujie, the new deputy chief editor, was no exception. Yes, this plan is driving me crazy, Zheng Yujie said helplessly. She didn't pretend in front of Poplar Fruit like before. Poplar Fruit didn't care, so she was more willing to be herself. You want me to recommend a few books for you? Poplar Fruit said with a headache. I don't understand the operation of the publishing house, and my suggestions are not as good as your colleagues. Who said that I need your recommendations? My plan is almost finished, Zheng Yujie said. Now I just need a book to be the main title. I have an idea about this, but I am worried that this book won't sell well. I just want you to give me some advice. What book? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. Teenage Pie's Fantasy Drift, Zheng Yujie said. Oh, it's this book, Poplar Fruit said suddenly. Have you read it? Zheng Yujie asked curiously. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. I haven't read it, but I have heard about it. Of course he had heard about it. Poplar Fruit didn't read every foreign book, but in order to understand the current situation of foreign books and some classic works, he still read a lot of publishing reports. With his memory, of course, he could still remember this foreign language book that had appeared repeatedly in many media outlets. 8 or 9 years ago, this book was very popular abroad. Poplar Fruit explained. Not only that, this book also won a lot of important awards, such as the 2002 Booker Prize in England, the 2002 Best Book on Amazon.com, the Big Apple Times Outstanding Book of the Year, Publishers Weekly's Best Book of the Year, Rocky Mountain Times Best Novel of the Year, and in 2004 it won the German Book Award. That's not right, Poplar Fruit asked doubtfully. This book has been famous for so long, how could it not be published by a domestic publishing house? Zheng Yujie said with a wry smile. Yes, Yilin Publishing House has introduced this book before, but it didn't sell well, and the results were not ideal. Until now, only one edition has been published. That's possible. Poplar Fruit analyzed for Zheng Yujie. Not every book suits the taste of our people. This book seems to be a bit of an absurd fantasy story, and domestic readers may not be able to accept it. Well, that's true, Zheng Yujie said. I chose this book mainly because a few days ago, I got a message through a private channel. She paused and asked, do you know Lian, the director of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon? Of course, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. How could I not know? He's the best director in the Chinese community. A few years ago, he won the Oscar for Best Director for Brokeback Mountain. He's preparing to make a movie based on this book. Zheng Yujie suddenly threw out a big piece of information. Don't tell anyone. This matter is still being kept a secret. Lian is going to make a movie about a young Pi's fantasy? Poplar Fruit said in surprise. Then this book is different. Yes, no matter how the book's sales were before, Lian's movie will increase its sales, Zheng Yujie said. However, if we only borrow Lian's influence, it can't become our main book. Moreover, there's no way for me to persuade the editor-in-chief to trade back the publishing rights of this book. You want to ask my opinion? Poplar Fruit asked. Yes. Zheng Yujie was lying on the big bed in her house in Beijing. She crossed her legs and said, I sent you a book written by the original author and a translator. Take a look. If I translate it for you, can you make this book so popular that everyone wants to read it? Everyone wants to buy it. There are so many publishers and translators in Beijing. Why did you come all the way to find me to give you an idea? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Because you're handsome, Zhang Yujie said casually. Ah. Okay, I'll stop teasing you, Zhang Yujie said seriously. I haven't told anyone about this. There are so many people, but you're the one I trust the most, so I came to you. Why? Are you still not willing to help? The one I trust the most, Poplar Fruit was inexplicably touched. He froze for a moment, then smiled gently and said, Sister Yujie thinks so highly of you. Of course, I'm willing to help. Don't worry, I'll definitely take good care of it for you. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Zhang Yujie said. It's not that I have to choose Teenage Pie's Fantasy Drifting as my main book. It's just that it's a rare opportunity to catch up with Lian to make a movie about this book. Zhang Yujie said. If we can make this book that has been banished into the cold palace a bestseller again, it'll be a good result for us. But if this book can't be saved, and you decide that it's not our country's cup of tea, then it doesn't matter. I can continue to look for it. Zhang Yujie laughed. It's not a big deal, right? She also wittily used the classic lines that she said on the Spring Festival Gala in Shenyang 2 years ago. Poplar Fruit was amused by her imitation of a strong northeastern accent. After a long time he stopped and said, Okay, I'll help you take a look. You also take care of your body. Don't work too hard. Before hanging up the phone, Poplar Fruit finally warned Zhang Yujie. There was a beep-beep sound from the phone. Zhang Yujie held the phone in front of her chest and didn't put it down for a long time, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Everyone, use your votes to buy the poor. Greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 134. In the blink of an eye, it was already the end of 2011. Kiki was almost 8 months old. Thinking back to the time when she was a wrinkled baby, under the care of her father, Poplar Fruit, she had grown into a little girl who could crawl and talk. Chi-Chi loved to smile, and when she smiled, her 2 front teeth were exposed. Her white teeth were very dazzling, and Yangguo was very satisfied. Every day, she thought that when she grew a little older, she could find a way to make delicious food for Chi-Chi. Today was the 22nd of December, Kiki's first winter solstice. In the past, Poplar Fruit would go to Song Jiwen's house for a meal. This year he couldn't. Because there was an old man in his family who was sick, Song Jiwen and his family went back to their hometown to visit. Therefore, they didn't come back to Yangcheng for the winter solstice. Poplar Fruit originally planned to cook something simple for himself. This winter solstice wasn't a big deal. However, when Poplar Fruit came back from his morning exercise, he received a call from his big brother, Hewenjua. Brother Yang. Hewenjua's rough voice came from the phone. How is it? Do you have any plans for the winter solstice? After returning from his hometown, Hewenjua might have been out on a mission and didn't have time to contact him. More than a week ago, he wanted to invite Poplar Fruit to his house. However, Poplar Fruit was worried about Kiki's cold and didn't want to take her out, so he declined. Big brother are you guys off today? Poplar Fruit laughed. I'm all alone in Yangcheng. How could I have any plans? How's the child's cold? How is it? Do you want to come over for a meal? Your sister-in-law is cooking today. Hewenjua said. That's great. I haven't been to Big Brother's house yet, so I'll go over for a meal today, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Kiki's cold has already recovered. Tell me the address and I'll go over now. No, it's troublesome to take a taxi. I'll drive over to pick you up. Hewenjua arranged everything for Poplar Fruit without any explanation. As soon as he finished speaking, he hung up the phone. Poplar Fruit shook his head. He didn't know what to do with his straightforward brother. He packed up Kiki's things and put them in a small bag. Kiki was also dressed neatly. She was wearing a more fashionable one-piece cow coat. Even the hat was connected. Kiki looked like she was in a sleeping bag. Poplar Fruit was still worried, so he wrapped the straps with a small quilt. Kiki was wrapped up tightly, and only her 2 big eyes could be seen rolling around. When Hewenjua arrived, Poplar Fruit carried the small bag and went downstairs. Hewenjua's car was a Land Rover Range Rover with a military license plate. It looked like Hewenjua's character. It was domineering but calm, rough but stylish. When he drove, the sound of the car was like a tiger's roar. It was majestic. Many women didn't like Land Rovers. In their eyes, such a car without a beautiful curve was ugly. This was normal. What did women like? Jewelry, cosmetics, beautiful clothes. These were all small, exquisite, and colorful. Men, on the other hand, were born with the smell of machinery in their bones. They liked guns and machines. An off-road vehicle like the Land Rover was made for men. They were dynamic, full of momentum, and very sensitive to control. They could satisfy men's desire for power. Yang also fell in love with the Land Rover at first sight. Perhaps it was because he had stayed in the city for too long. He longed to be able to drive such a car. It was like riding a wild horse, galloping through the grassland. Even if he couldn't drive it, to be able to drive such a huge car was also a great pleasure for a man. When Kiki grows up, I'll buy a Land Rover too. Poplar Fruit got in the car and touched it enviously. He secretly made up his mind. Poplar Fruit could still afford a Land Rover. A brand new Land Rover Range Rover was only 600,000 yuan. If it was a sports version, it would be a little more than 1,000,000 yuan. Poplar Fruit's 2 months of translation fees and the money from Ardal were about 1,200,000 yuan. If Kiki wasn't too young and couldn't take care of her while driving, Poplar Fruit would definitely buy one. When they arrived at He Wenjua's house, Poplar Fruit realized that his brother was so rich. He lived in the villa area of Dongshan Mountain, a 2-story red brick villa with a garden. When the car stopped at the door, Poplar Fruit felt a sense of elegance and wealth. Big Brother said that he was the captain of a special force in Yangcheng's military. His rank shouldn't be too high. At most, he should be a colonel, right? Poplar Fruit muttered in his heart. He didn't know much about military ranks, so he was just guessing. But no matter what his rank is, how could he be rich enough to drive a nice car and live in a luxurious house? Could it be that there's some corruption involved? He Wenjua seemed to have seen through Poplar Fruit's thoughts. He laughed heartily and said, "This house was assigned to my father by the country. He's not at home today. Come in, let me introduce you." Poplar Fruit scratched his head awkwardly and followed He Wenjua into the yard. Ring ring ring. A large wolf dog with a bell around its neck ran briskly to He Wenjua's side. It rubbed its head against He Wenjua's thigh. It was affectionate with He Wenjua while vigilantly looking at Poplar Fruit. Unlike other dogs, its eyes were very sharp, but it didn't bark to scare people. "This is Big Black." He Wenjua squatted down and affectionately pulled the corner of its mouth back. "He's a meritorious military dog in our army. He just retired at the beginning of this year." He Wenjua let Big Black sniff Poplar Fruit's scent and smiled. "Don't be afraid. Big Black is very smart. He knows that you're a guest." After that, he let Big Black go back to its little nest. At this time, a woman who was about the same age as He Wenjua came out of the garden. She was wearing a straw hat and carrying a dirty empty bucket. If it weren't for the quiet and elegant temperament on her face, Poplar Fruit would have thought that she was a rural woman. "Is this Poplar Fruit?" She walked out with the help of a tree and looked at Poplar Fruit, and He Wenjua with a smile. "Yes." He Wenjua laughed, grabbed the bucket from her hand and said, "Poplar Fruit, this is your sister-in-law, Ji Xiaoyan." Ji as in Ji Zhou, Xiao as in spring sleep, Dian as in flying south, Ji Xiaoyan added. "Hello, sister-in-law." Poplar Fruit quickly greeted her. "You don't have to be so polite." Ji Xiaoyan's personality was very gentle. Her voice wasn't as rough as He Wenjua's. Instead, it had a hint of southern grace, although her accent sounded more like a northeasterner. She then said, "Wenjua has mentioned you to me many times. I heard that if it weren't for you last time, Wenjua would have died. I really don't know how to thank you." Poplar Fruit shook his hand and said, No. In that kind of dangerous situation, Big Brother he and I advanced and retreated together. There's no need to talk about who saved who. Hey, don't talk outside. It's cold. Don't let the children catch a cold. Come in, come in." He Wenjua smiled. He opened his arms and walked into the house with Poplar Fruit and Ji Xiaoyan, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. "Everyone, use your votes to support the poor. greater than over equal to, that you're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.